The meeting of the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees is now in session. If you will stand and please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. West, if you would do the roll call, please.
Mr. Jackman?
Here.
Mr. Hay?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Batolo?
Here.
Mr. Mr. Reading?
Here.
Mr. Mickelson? Chairman Jellicoe?
Here. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. First of all, I do want to mention that we have added an executive session and the board self-evaluation, and those will both be towards the end of the agenda. So the approval of the agenda will include those two additions. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Been moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, please.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
The motion passes. And we also have an addendum, so I would entertain a motion to add the addendum.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor of adding the addendum, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman.
I would like to move to switch on the general agenda, items 8 and 7. I feel like a lot of our public comment questions will be answered by the superintendent reports. So to have the public comment first, questions, and then the superintendent report.
Okay, the motion is to move the public comment to prior to the superintendent reports. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Mr. Hay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So we will have the communications immediately following the budget hearing. Okay, going back to item number 3, we will now suspend I need a motion to suspend the board meeting and open the budget hearing.
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. So we are
Aye.
now in the budget hearing. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Hey, Zach, do you have the budget book? You can put the budget book in, please. We're going to start toward the middle where all of the technical stuff is. So if you could go to page 19 for me, please. Okay, so page 19 and page 20, this is the resolution that the board passes to adopt the budget. And this is required by state statute. And it's basically a list of the appropriations for the various funds that we have in the district. And then could you jump to page 22 for me, please, Zach? Then this page is a list of the mill levies. So there's a mill levy for the 25 meal for the school, for the state, a Sweetwater BOCES, Region 5 BOCES, and the Recreation Board. And it's important to note that when you approve the budget, that you're also passing these mill levies on. Okay, so let's go back up to page 2 for the general fund. Okay, maybe a little bit small, but the expenditures in the general fund show about 91,341,896. There's cash reserves of 4.5 million, and we're using cash carryover of 6.87 to balance the budget. So the total amount of cash that we're carrying over is a little over 11 million to 11.44 million. Could you go down one more page, please? Thank you. This is our minimum fund balance and how it's divided up. So we've got 3 million for use for cash flow purposes. And then also 1.57 set aside for future expenditures. And this is a little bit lower than what we've had in years past, as you can see, but we think it's doable this year. In page 4. These are the federal funds and the state and local grants, and the details are in the following pages, but this is where our consolidated grant comes in. And then page 9, please. And this is the Recreation Board, and this budget was passed by the Rec Board earlier this afternoon. Then page 10. And you notice that there are no numbers on this, and this is a good thing because that means we have no debt.
Yeah.
So this is one of my favorite pages in the whole book. Thank you. Page 11. This is our capital projects fund, and we use this mainly to fund the 5-year spending plans for technology, transportation, facilities, grounds, custodial, nutrition services, and new for this year for some of the buildings. Because what we've done accountability-wise is if they have not spent all of their discretionary budgets in the general fund, we've taken that and transferred it over to the capital projects fund, so they have it for their use there for things like equipment and uniforms and things that can come out of that capital projects fund. And what that does is it gives them a little bit of buy-in for their discretionary budget, so they're not solely turning it over to the general fund, but they're setting it aside for their own purposes out of the capital projects fund. And that also helps when things get tight as well, because it gives them a little bit of flexibility if they know they've got a pocket of money set aside that they don't have to allocate out of their discretionary budget. Also in the capital projects fund, there's some FF&E for the new satellite high school. This typically we end up purchasing more technology type items than what the state gives us money for. There's also some COVID funds in this one this year. And as I mentioned before, this fund is important because it allows us to carry out our 5-year spending plans and helps balance the budget in the general fund. Okay, page 12. This is the district capital projects, and most of these are funded by the Rec Board. And this will include, when the construction starts, the renovation for Head Start for the Washington School building, that it will be accounted for in this fund as well. And once we get all the final numbers and the timeline and whatnot, I would expect that we would have a budget hearing to amend the budget to be able to appropriate those construction funds that we'll have coming in. So I would anticipate in the next couple months that will be coming before you as well. Okay, page 13. Okay, this one is the capital construction. So this is the money for the state. So this is the new satellite high school fund there. And that's pretty much, there's some other little projects there, but this is most of it. It's most of the money. On page 14. This is the insurance fund. And this year the margins are fairly slim and we budget to the worst case scenario here. So we budget in this fund for the aggregate. And what that means is that we don't have to budget for that in the general fund. And so that's the exact number escapes me, but it's millions of dollars. And otherwise, we'd have to find other places in the general fund to make up that. So that's one key takeaway. Also new this year, when we're renewing our stop loss, that we're finding that it's called lasering some of our high claims. And what that means is that they're basically not going to cover that person under our stop loss insurance, that we're needing to pay the entire claims for that person. And our stop loss amount is about 200,000 per person now. So we would need to pay those first 200,000 anyway, but for those people that they're lasering, we would need to pay whatever their claims happen to be. And so that's an additional 1.3, and that's also in the health insurance fund and not in the general fund, and that helps keep the premiums down as well.
About how many people represent that above the stop loss?
Yep. For the lasers?
Yes.
You're asking? Yep, there's about seven people. Yep. And what's happened over the past years, we've had a large number of high claims, and that's what you're seeing there. Those high claim people that they're lasering.
Some of these are continuations of those high claims?
Mm-hmm. They would
Well,
be.
okay. And basically the company with the stop loss is saying we're not going to cover those people.
That's correct, yeah. They're saying we're not wanting to take on the risk for these people.
Which is supposedly the purpose of having the stop loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so as far as claims have gone this year, we've seen about a 20% increase in our stop loss, because of that large claims that we've had are up about 33%. And we'll go into a little bit more about what that means in terms of the health insurance premiums later on in the agenda. We've seen some pretty healthy increases this year. To put that into perspective, I believe the last 2 years that we were on a decreasing rate, and that was the effect of the change in the plan design that were causing those savings, but now we're kind of bottomed out on the upswing again. As far as reserves go, the target is about 5 years of 15% year-over-year increases. Last year, we had a little bit over 4 years coming into it. This year, we're at 3 years and 10 months. So we're using a little bit of that reserve to help keep the premiums low in the general fund as well. And again, we'll get into a little bit more in the health insurance line item, but since we've seen that big increase, that 33%, it would be very difficult, in my opinion, to pass that entire amount on to the employee. It's just a large
So
dollar amount.
the district is going to buffer that amount a little bit, cushion that amount a little bit.
Yep, and the proposal is to cap it at about a 15%, 10% for over 65 retarees. But
And like you
that's-
said, we'll get into that when we get more to the insurance premiums, but
Yep, we will, but yeah. But that's important to note that we're using a little bit of the reserves that we have set aside, and we're still trying to get to our 5-year target. Okay, and again, the health insurance premium item, those will be provisional rates because they're still shopping us out to see if we can get a better rate. And we just haven't got those quotes back yet, but we hope to by August, and so we'll be able to finalize those amounts then, just similar to what we did last year. Okay, page 18, please, Zach. Okay, this is the Student Activity Fund, and these are held on behalf of student groups and activities. Okay, and then page 38, and it's like way at the back.
You said 38, Scott?
Yes, 38. Okay, this is our cash flow projections. And it's hard to see in these numbers, but you can see in November and in May, not so much, but that's when we get our big county treasurer money. Also new this year, and I'll get into a little bit more when we look at the fiscal projection, is we're in line for a tax shortfall grant, which comes in October. And last year it was a little over 200,000. This year it's over a little bit over 1.9. So there's a significant increase for that. So that's going to help us when we get down to the end
so
of
that's
the year.
basically where the county does not meet meet our need, meet the amount of money that we should have, and so the state makes that up now,
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep. and
just for
it's- Yep,
clarification.
and it comes in a one-time payment, yep, in October. Okay, and before I open up for questions, I'd finally like to thank Superintendent McGovern and the principals, the department heads, the secretaries, especially Gina and the gals in my department, and Kiara for designing the cover of the book. She's done that for pretty much every year, and she does a very good job for that. I think this, going into this next year, I think we'll be okay because there's some one-time money that we have available to use for us. But I do believe that there are some impending budget cuts on the horizon, and the legislatures have indicated to us already that it's not going to be business as usual going forward. You know, the state's looking at shortfalls in their revenues and even more than what they had anticipated. So I think things are going to get pretty tight. We're still striving to be responsible and live within our means, and we're traditionally a very conservative district, so I believe we can still meet that goal. And we still continue to plan carefully and prudently to meet the needs of the students, you know, not only now, but for those years up ahead in the future. Any questions on the budget book itself?
Any questions on the 2020, 2021 budget?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Jackman?
So as it stands, we're not going to, because previously we've always carried the maximum that we can carry. And we're not going to be able to do that this coming year in our reserves based on the budget.
Well, the cash flow projection shows no, but if we're, you know, hold steady like we have in the past, I think there's a very good chance that we would still be over that amount.
Okay.
You know, they took a run at the legislature in the special session about limiting the amount of money that you can transfer to different funds. You know, they may do that again, or they might even lift that 15% cap if they know that things are going to get so tight, they'll let you carry over funds from one year to the next. So that may still be a possibility too, but we'll keep a close watch on that. And as we normally do throughout the course of the year.
Thank you.
There was some discussion about that at the joint appropriations meeting on Monday. They brought that up again about perhaps increasing that cash carryover, because instead of districts using it, having that in case they need it, because they feel like they're going to need it. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Anyone? Hearing none, let's move to the capital update.
Is that, can you go to that next? Yeah. Yeah, the next line item, the next budget line item, the attachment, the last page. Yep, perfect. Very good. Thank you. So this is the same form that we've seen before. The top half are the revenues, the bottom half are the expenditures. And the furthest left column, that's the budget for the previous fiscal year. The one we're going to be concentrating on is the second one over. So that's going to be the budget year that we're going to be currently in. So July 2020 through June of 2021. We're looking at ADMs of about 5350. And that's pretty close to what we expected in our preliminary budget. So those are holding pretty steady. As far as the WD 100 goes, so if you could go, yep, if you look at that 81 million, that's what we think we're going to get from the foundation guarantee. Now this number is based on their preliminary model because they didn't have the final one out yet, but it was the best that we had at the time. So that might change a little bit, but I don't think it will change substantially. It's also important to note that the special education reimbursement is still capped at, for us, about 13 million. We spent about 750,000 more than that last year. And I think we're gonna do the same this year. So I think it'll be higher than that. The next item of importance is that excess tax collections or the tax shortfall grant, that 1.9. And again, as Madam Chair alluded to, That is the money that the state makes up for us and the guarantee for the property tax assessments that we estimated but didn't receive. And so that for us represents one-time money that we can use going forward. So the important takeaway for that is that that's not something that we should be putting into the salary schedules because we couldn't maintain those over time. But as it being one-time money, that we have the use of that for this fiscal year. So if you could go down to the expenditure side. Yep, up just a tad. Yep. Okay. So we have some estimates in there for the health insurance. And as I mentioned before, we're seeing increasing costs. This last budget year, we were about 11.4 million in our total budget for the general fund. This year, we're up by about $1 million to 12.4 million. And, you know, the thought there is we're still using some of the reserves over in the health insurance fund to kind of mitigate the amount that we need to budget in the general fund. The other items are the bus leases. We have paid off a number or a couple of leases this year, so that won't be money that we have to spend next year. So that's the minus, but we do anticipate going out for new buses this next fiscal year. So we've got money set aside for that one as well. If you go down to the 620,000, that's the increase for the curriculum adoption. And I believe it's science that's on the slate for this upcoming year. Now I've got 3 line items for the staff compensation. The first line item is the amount that was budgeted last year that's coming off, so it's showing as a minus. The next item is the staff compensation that we talked about in the preliminary budget. And so this amount is enough to cover one step and also restore the frozen step. And then the third staff compensation line item, that's the one-time money that is set aside for the pleasure of the board. And I think what this will do is it'll give you an additional tool in your toolbox. So when the legislature, you know, comes along and tightens everybody's budget, you've got some things to work with there if you so desire. For example, you know, in years past, we've given an early retirement package. That would be one thing that may be worth considering. Also, there's a retention like we've done the past couple of years as well, or other types of compensation that would be left to the pleasure of the board. But we do have some one-time money that, you know, we have in our back pocket.
Okay.
And if you go down to the very bottom, that 614, what's new this year, as well as, and this was mainly due to the COVID, that we rolled over budget money for the prior year purchase orders, because otherwise that budget money isn't there and it comes out of, for example, this year's budget money. But we were able to use some of that one-time money to fund that because we have had trouble with getting the goods in that we ordered. And so timely delivery on those became a real issue. So we thought that we would take that one-time money and put it toward increasing the budget for the next year for those rollover purchase orders is what we call them.
Okay.
So we're looking at a funding gap of about 6.8, and that's what we're using our cash for. And that number was, I think, the same as it was in the preliminary budget. So we're looking at a total cash of a little over 11.4 for this next year. Going forward, as I mentioned before, you know, we think it's going to get tight once the legislature comes in to session, and, you know, we'll monitor that closely and, you know, we'll have to make whatever changes that we have to. Yep. We're coming into the, not next budget. Well, I guess it would be next budget year. So the 2021, 2022 year, already with a little bit of a deficit. It's smaller than it was at the preliminary budget stage, but we know that we have some work to do, and we'll be watching what the legislature does very closely. Other tools in your toolbox, we have the Capital Projects Fund, which helps us on the technology side. So if things get really tight, we know that we can still do our technology refreshes and whatnot. We also have an amount set aside for the buildings. We have some emergency generators. We have Dan's 5-year plan as well. We have a little bit of the COVID money if we need to use that. And we also have the health insurance fund with the reserves over there. And the takeaway for the reserves are, for the health insurance fund, it's not prudent to continually subsidize the premiums because eventually it's going to catch up with you. And so it's a short-term fix, but I believe in this year that increase was so much that, that's what it was set aside for. And I think it's a good use for this 1 year. And I'm opening it up to any questions.
Any questions on the fiscal update?
I've got one for you, Scott. On the 11,400,000, that would be our 15% money, correct?
Correct.
And if the legislature was to change that, it might go to 25%. Is that the
Yeah, they don't.
possibility, or have they said anything yet?
They haven't thrown out a number. Last year, they threw out a 25% and a 20%, but they were never able to really decide. 15% 11 for us, another 5% would be, for 5,000.
Yeah.
Or 5 million
5 million.
on top of that.
Mhm.
And that would help us roll into the next year. And, really what it comes down to at that point, if this cuts are steep, that will mean jobs. So the more we can carry over, the more jobs that we can keep for the
Mhm.
next year.
Mhm.
Now, Scott, can you clarify me, is that just a one-time stipulation on that? If they increase the amount that we can carry over, is that just for 1 year?
I don't know. It depends on how they design it. It could be for 1 year. It could be for, perpetuity or a limited number of years. That we'll just have to wait and see and
That's legislative action.
it is.
And they couldn't come to an agreement. There were some strings attached to the 25% that I think the House was not willing to. The Senate side wanted them, but the House was not willing to agree to them. So that's why it died. Any other questions on the fiscal update? Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, public comment for the budget hearing, we have received none. So we'll proceed with closing the budget hearing and reconvening the board meeting. So I could have a motion, please.
So,
Go ahead.
second.
Been moved by Mr. Hay and second by Mr. Jackman to move back into to close the budget hearing and move back into the regular board meeting, the special board meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, this is where we're going to go to the public comment. So, Mrs. Thompson, do you have a copy of the public comment?
Yes, I do.
So I'm going to start off, and then maybe if you would pick up where I leave off, and we'll
Sure.
go back and forth, okay?
Okay.
Okay, these are public comments regarding most of them are towards the plan. And so there are quite a few of them, but we are going to go through each and every one of them. And then hopefully, the reason for doing the public comment prior to the superintendent report is we believe that a lot of these questions will be answered in the report. And so that's why we have flipped the two agenda items. Okay, the first one is from Aaron Christensen, a parent. The schools need to be opened for in-school teaching. Anything less is detrimental to the students' learning and a gross injustice to their futures. COVID-19 is not a pandemic with a less than 1% death rate. Danielle Brown, a parent, will the kids have to wear a mask? Ashley Carson, also a parent. My question is, if my child has a low-grade fever, they should stay home, but will these days count against their sick days? And will there be repercussions if they exceed their allotted sick days at this difficult time? Jennifer Bates, a parent. My concern is with students that have a cough year-round due to asthma or allergies that have nothing to do with being sick. My child has this issue, and her being sent home every time she coughs concerns me. Gina Bennett, a parent. I do not agree with most of the guidelines set forth for reopening. My child will absolutely not walk around wearing a mask for the school day. If this is what we will be doing, I will be removing her from public school and enrolling her into a private homeschool. This alone can cause so many health risks and respiratory issues. I also do not agree that these children can't be children and not feel like they are in a prison cell. Not being able to play on a playground, eat with their friends in the cafeteria, nothing. Might as well put in prison bars and make them feel locked up. If this is what is moving forward, as said previously, I will take my child out of the school district along with a lot of others who have the same feelings and thoughts. I will not allow my child's childhood be stripped from them. Brittany Bennett, parent and staff. Is the district's absence policy going to change? If a child gets sick and cannot attend school physically or is too sick to do virtual class, how will this count against them? Rebecca Morrill, parent. How will my child with a life-threatening food allergy, peanuts, trees, nuts, be safe with the possibility for all students eating in classrooms with prepackaged food? Cross-contamination would be significantly increased even from the significant contamination that already is in the school. Rachelle Duran, parent. My son is a yearly transfer student from Rock Springs to Farson. With many in-town students riding the bus to Farson each day and the bus restrictions we have heard, is the current situation going to affect the approval of his transfer for this school year? Megan Allen, staff. Operating under the idea that classroom teachers are expected to maintain social distancing while teaching this upcoming school year, how are we supposed to spread students out? If cohorts have to be kept together to limit interactions, how are students receiving required services? Are those teachers coming into the classrooms, possibly contaminating each classroom, or are students going to be leaving their home rooms? Tracy Hager, parent. First, I would like to say that I appreciate all the time and energy that went into developing a plan for our students to return to school this fall. This was not an easy task, nor one that will be perfect. I do have many reservations about sending my 4 kids in 3 schools back this year, as I am sure many others do as well. First and foremost would be my concern for the procedure for exposure and/or having a positive case. Based on the guideline, it seems there could be many opportunities for my children to be subject to the 14-day quarantine or longer if they themselves are positive. This worries me as I am concerned for the possible lack of continuity of education and constant upheaval as they transition back and forth from in-school to virtual/online. I am also not a fan of continued mask wearing for hours at a time. Masks are hot and uncomfortable and present even more face-touching, germ-spreading as they need to be constantly adjusted. For children, especially, this is an added concern for me. Add to that the rigorous attempt for social distancing, which I understand is necessary, but still concerning nonetheless, as it truly does isolate and create an atmosphere of dehumanizing socially. All of these issues and many more worry me for the mental health of our youth. I was truly hoping Sweetwater County School District Number 1 would offer an additional option of online learning for this school year, and I still really hope this may be offered. As that does not currently appear to be the case, I am strongly considering and most likely will be withdrawing my 4 children from the district to pursue that option elsewhere. Again, I know our district is stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I commend you on the work you have done to bring our children back as safely and effectively as you can. Deborah Fanton, a parent. School district says in their reopening plan that they are using a science-based approach and CDC guidelines to reopen schools. The CDC recommends that every person over the age of 2 who does not have breathing problems should wear a mask. Therefore, the school district should follow this important CDC guideline in their reopening approach. By not doing this, you will be endangering the lives of teachers, students, and staff. Victoria De La Cruz, parent. Questions for school openings. If a teacher or student has 5 classes a day with 30 students each, do all 150 of those students/teachers need to then stay home and quarantine for 14 days if someone tests positive in the class or has symptoms of COVID? Do all 150 of those students now have to get tested before returning to school? If a student quarantines for 14 days, do they still need to get tested? What if someone who lives in the same house as a teacher tests positive? Does that teacher now need to take 14 days off of work to quarantine? Substitutes teach in multiple schools. What if they are diagnosed with COVID-19 or around someone infected with COVID? Do all the kids in each school now have to quarantine and get tested? What about bringing kids lunch to school from a restaurant or from home for birthdays? Will lunch being brought from home be permitted? Will students with sensory issues be required to wear masks? What about a child that has allergies and coughs or sneezes a lot? Will they automatically be sent home because of COVID? There has to be a solid plan for safety moving forward. Martha Talbot, parent. As a parent, I am unable to fulfill the requirements of an IEP through remote learning. How will that be addressed? Also, should a child be in an isolation situation at home, will that be counted as excessive absences, or is it covered on the current COVID guidelines? I am not real supportive of the remote education plan as it went last year. I don't really feel it was effective, and many parents will not have someone to ensure the child gets their necessary work done due to long schedules, single parents, etc. Christina Springer, parent. Questions for opening school. Most of my questions apply to elementary. Will there be a completely virtual online option available to students through the school district? Will masks be available to all students, teachers, administration, etc., or will they need to be provided by parents? What disinfectant will be used? What is the protocol for cleaning? What does the attendance policy look like this year? What flexibility will be required for COVID-19? Will every student, teacher, facility member be frequently tested for COVID-19? Will each student, teacher, facility member be required to be tested before school starts? Will daily temperatures be taken, monitored, and tracked? Or is it up to parents to take temps and send students? Will children be tested for ability to taste? Will they be sent home for coughing, sneezing, etc.? Will routine COVID-19 testing be available and conducted at schools? Will students be asked if they were given Tylenol, Motrin, or Advil before school? What will recess, PE, art, music classes look like? How will breakfast and lunches be conducted? What is the maximum class size for elementary, junior high, high school classrooms? Where will a written copy of these measures be posted? If a teacher tests positive for COVID-19, are they required to quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks? If that teacher has 5 classes a day with 30 students each, do all 150 of those students need to stay home and quarantine for 14 days? Do all 150 of those students now have to get tested? Who pays for those tests? Are they happening at school? How are the parents being notified? Does everyone in each of those kids' families need to get tested? Who pays for that? What if someone who lives in the same house as a teacher or student tests positive? Does that teacher or student now need to take 14 days off of work to quarantine? Where is the district going to find a substitute teacher who will work in a classroom full of exposed, possibly infected students for substitute pay? Substitutes teach in multiple schools. What if they are diagnosed with COVID-19? Do all the kids in each school now have to quarantine and get tested? Who is going to pay for that? What if a student in your kid's class tests positive? What if your kid tests positive? Does every other student and teacher they have been around quarantine? Do we all get notified who is infected and when? Or because of HIPAA regulations, are parents and teachers just going to get mysterious, may have been in contact emails all year long? What is this stress going to do to our teachers and students? How does it affect their health and well-being? How does it affect their ability to teach or learn? How does it affect the quality of education they are able to provide? What is it going to do to our kids? What are the long-term effects of consistently being stressed out? Will virtual counseling be available for the stress induced by the current situation? If a full virtual/online option isn't available, what is required if parents opt to homeschool? What are accepted online platforms for homeschooling for this district, K-12, Wyoming Connection Academy, KHAN, etc.? Alice Rogers, a grandparent. I want to vote against a 4-day school week in 2021-2022. Martinez Courtney, parent and staff. Will there be a teacher assigned to virtual learning for each grade level, or will teachers do both? I think having them do both might make it really difficult for our teachers. Maria De Simone, staff. I would like to suggest that the state and/or district assign vouchers for families who have to work and are worried about their kids being left alone, but do not want their children in the schools. These vouchers would pay a licensed babysitter to come into the home and be a present adult while child or children 12 and under are home during school hours. They would be paid minimum wage by the state or district, as they do not have to be certified to teach. To get licensed, the county would provide a safe babysitting class for them, which includes CPR training. Not only would this be a huge relief for working families who have to go out of the home to work, but it would also provide work to people who might have been recently laid off or furloughed. This would also be a great opportunity for some of our local college students as well, as they could work on their own classes in tandem with the children. The babysitters would have to hold a high school diploma and have a background check. They would be responsible for driving the kids to school supplied meals or to prepare the children's meals and to make sure they are on task and on their parents' desired schedules. If they need to be watched longer than the normal school hours, where in most instances parents would have their kids in an after-school program, the babysitter would be paid until 40 hours was reached. After that, they would be paid time and a half. This, of course, means the parent returns home promptly after work and not take advantage of the system and go meet up with friends or go to the grocery store. Those things need to be done off of the school clock, just as it is expected for teachers to not do personal errands on school time. As for the teachers, the ones who do not feel comfortable going into the building would be teaching the students who are distance learning with said babysitter present. And as for the older students, 13 years of age to high school seniors, they would have the same opportunity, but the parent may choose to not have a sitter in the home. They would just sign a waiver that gives up their opportunity to use the voucher. Rochelle Stratton, MSN RN, parent. The draft does address the issue of teachers/staff that are in the high-risk category for COVID-19 complications. However, there is nothing in the draft that acknowledges what will be offered for high-risk students or those that live with people that are at risk. I have a high-risk child. I am a high-risk adult. We care for my dad who is at high risk. What will the options be for children that are at risk or living with those in the high-risk category? Do we need to send them to virtual academies? For example, Connections Academy. Katie Macy, staff. Is there a specific reason synchronous learning used in Tier 2 and Tier 3? In a world where we are working for equity for our kids, I am afraid this may widen the gap. If we do go virtual and we are stuck in one modality of learning, it may not be what's best for our kids. Could we explore a mixture of both asynchronous and synchronous? Is PPE going to be provided for teaching staff? Students. Will keeping with an with a normal attendance policy, discourage parents from keeping possibly sick students at home. Also, not just sick, but possibly exposed. Mrs. Thompson, would you pick up from there, please?
Sure. Marty Albert, staff. First, I'd like to thank the Reentry Task Force for their work in developing plans to ensure the education of our students will continue. The plan states that instructors receive training in course design and delivery. When will that training be available to instructors? Please make training available before August 11th. While I appreciate the district respecting that instructors are currently off contract time, many would take advantage of the training to help us deliver distance learning as effective as possible. Rachel George, parent, public comment. I have read the district's proposed plan, and while I appreciate the time commitment of those on the committee, I find the plan to be so vague as to be completely useless for me as a parent. I cannot tell from the plan whether or not masks will be required, what kind of distancing between students will be enforced, or what exactly will constitute increased cleaning. Without this information, I have no way of knowing how to prepare my students for their return to school, or if I should be looking at alternatives to their current school. I would really like to know when or even if we can expect more fleshed out plan for our return to the school this fall. I hope that the board and superintendent will take into consideration that they themselves are still meeting virtually and not expect our students, faculty, and staff to spend their days in rooms with not enough distancing and little to no mask use. Although none of what we did in the spring was easy, I felt that the superintendent, district staff, and teachers did an amazing job of getting technology to all the students and keeping the education going as smoothly as possible. I had hoped that the plan for this fall would be at least as well done since they had so much more preparation time, but currently I find myself disappointed. Hopefully more information will be coming soon. Thank you for your time. LJ, staff. Contact between adults and students will happen with the Tier 1 and Tier 2 options. One of my concerns is how long groups of people will be congregated. The amount of time in a confined space will make a difference in transmission of COVID-19, even with 6-foot distances. What are you defining as a confined space? If a classroom is considered a confined space, we know airflow is not good. What are some options of mitigation? Are the schools following the guidance of the governor, CDC guidelines in general, or is each school going to be deciding what works best for them, regardless of the governor's guidelines or CDC guidelines? Also, have other public buildings, rec center, libraries, events complex, been considered for housing students during the day to help with social distancing in the district? Could other locations be leased to help with distancing? With non-traditional options like gyms and lunchrooms be possible options for social distancing within each school? Right now, with the weather warm, windows can be open for circulation and fresh air. This will not be possible when the weather gets colder. Are you anticipating going to 100% virtual when the weather gets colder? Or are there other thoughts on what might work during this time? With the possibility of transmission between education delivery types, how will grades be earned/given? Will it be consistent with all 3 tiers? Will these grades be accepted to higher education institutions that our seniors may want to attend next year? Will the grades also be accepted by the Hathaway Scholarship Program and other scholarship entities? Katie Macy, staff. Is there specific, this one's a repeat, so I'm just gonna skip over it if that's okay.
So is the next one.
And so is the next one. I don't think the one after that is though. Cheryl Notman, SEA. SEA holds student and staff SEA holds student and staff health at a high priority as the district and community navigate reopening schools. We appreciate the work of the Reentry Committee for coming up with a viable school reopening plans. We want students to receive the best education in the safest manner. We recognize the volatile nature of the COVID pandemic in our country, state, and community. Therefore, we must be flexible in order to keep all stakeholders safe. In order to provide the best educational environment, we urge the district to provide communication, training, and consistency throughout all of the schools prior to opening. Christina Springer, parent. What are our options if we do not wish to send our children back into physical buildings? Is there an option for virtual or online learning in lieu of sending our children back into the school buildings? Is virtual or online learning options available through Sweetwater County School District Number 1, or will we need to find an online homeschool?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that concludes the public comment that we have received. So we'll now move to the superintendent report, which is a presentation on the Reentry Smart Start Plan. Superintendent McGovern.
Thank you, Mrs. Jellicoe. Before we begin this evening, I'm going to be walking through that item for the Smart Start Plan. Some of the pages I'll summarize for us, and then specifically if they are WDE assurances that we have to do. But when it becomes to more specific things for our school district, I will definitely pause and make sure that we focus on some of those items. Trustees, if at any time you have a question, please let me know at that point in the plan. And then also this evening, just so our audience is aware, we have our directors here this evening from the different departments. So we have Casey Arnoldi, Director of Special Services, Joe Klingenpeel, the Director of Transportation. I'd also say a nice warm welcome and also to introduce to our trustees. We have Jody Gardner. She is our new Chief Academic Officer. And she came in July 1, right in the middle of COVID. Here's your new job and welcome. But she's jumped in with flying colors. And of course, we have Nicole Bolton, our Director of Human Resources, Stephanie, our Chief Information Officer. And behind me, we have our Director of Facilities, Dan Celaroli, and then also Angie Aramosby, our Director of Nutrition Services. So at any point in there, you might see me pause. That way they have an opportunity to share something specific about their department so we can answer some of those questions that came through public comment, if that would work.
Thank you. Mhm.
Okay, first, when we go ahead and get started, Zach, if you want to go ahead and pull the document up. The Reentry Smart Start Plan, later on in the agenda, I will be asking the Board of Education to approve this plan, knowing that there may be revisions or adjustments as necessary. That is probably the most important thing that we need to emphasize for tonight when we go through the plan. The reason for that is because of the state guidelines and the health orders that are changing on us at any given time. And so we know today our governor had a press conference at 4:30 with our state health officer, Dr. Harris. We know that the plans have remain the same from now through the end of July 31st. So some of the more specifics to that plan we're not able to put in because we don't know what those health orders are going to be at that given time. So with that time frame, what we can vision for this is that when the next set of health orders come in, knowing that what we currently have has been in place for 6 weeks, but knowing that they may change at the end of July. And once we know what those are, we look to the end of July and then rolling out what that specific plan would be. So that would affect the staff that come in and return on August 11th. And then also when we bring kids in on the first day of school, which is August 17th. So there's a lot that's going to happen in between there. We know the uncertainty that people are feeling at this time. They want answers and they want information. And so with that, we want to make sure that we can give any of those specifics that we can, but we also need to acknowledge that the footing of COVID-19 is an ever-changing landscape, and trying to put specifics on things that we don't know that may look very different in a month from now, we just simply cannot do at this time. So with that, going ahead and starting, I'd like to say a thank you to the task force. That was a 30-something member group that helped us put this plan into place. We met 4 times, and it was no easy thing to try to put a reopening of schools in a time that none of us have ever experienced before. So I would like to say thank you to them. Also, this reentry plan comes to before our board and our community with the idea that we would like to provide in-person instruction and options for virtual learning, virtual education, and we will go into those. So we believe that we are able to provide both to our community and to our families. Zach, going to page 2 on some of these, I'm going to go over fairly quickly so we could move through. Page 2 is actually just the table of contents for the different sections of our plan. Beginning on page 3, the Wyoming Department of Education is requiring what's called a Smart Start plan. The specifics for their plan came out on July 1, right before the 4th of July holiday for us. This Smart Start plan actually was released to our community on Friday, July 10th, and it's been out for public comment since that time. What you are seeing on pages 3, and they extend all the way through, and it goes up until, I'm going to keep on going. It goes up until page 10. In the WDE plan, they have components that are required, components that are recommended, and then others that are simply suggestions. The latest information that districts have been told is that the Smart Start plan that districts submit need to meet all of the required sections for WDE. The due date for the Wyoming Department of Ed is August 3rd. So if you can envision the timeline of everything that is going on. So tonight we would ask for approval from our local board, knowing that things may change with specifics. Also, we would like to submit our plan after we meet with our local county health officer, who is also sharing our plan with the state health officer as we speak. We'd like to get that to WDE for approval as soon as possible. And then once the information comes in from the state, then we can move our plan into action. There's a lot of moving pieces to this at this point, which also is part of some of the specifics that our community would like to know. On page 11, this is our district strategic plan, knowing that one of our goals has always been through this time that we want to ensure our schools are safe and secure. What we're dealing with in COVID-19 is probably one of the biggest challenges schools all across America will face. And how do we provide instruction knowing that opening up schools is much more difficult than closing them down ever was last spring? The reentry plan on page 12 actually goes into the 4 components of the plan. They include communications, safety and wellness, school operations, and instruction and technology. Communication, we believe, is something that needs to be threaded throughout the entire plan. They want a separate section for that, but we believe that once this plan can be approved by our local board, then starting tomorrow, we are ready to release information to our staff and to our community, knowing that it needs to begin with our Board of Education first. On page 13, it is actually the school district plan. We have a process that we use. The only thing that changes is really the subject or the content area. We always start with the Board of Education, and then from there, we gather input from our community. We always loop it back to our board, and that cycle is a continuous process. We want input from our stakeholders. In this Smart Start plan, we did 2 different surveys as the task force was envisioning their draft. One of them was feedback from our community, and I'll go into that as we design the different avenues. And the other was feedback from our staff. What was on their mind, what was their concerns, and what would they like to see from both groups. On page 13, we also know that we have liaisons that are built into the plan. Those liaisons actually extend into page 14. So we're okay, Zach, to move to that next one. When the task force was built, I just want to reiterate the importance of the stakeholders that were on there. You can see the names, but importantly is their dedicated effort, but also what they represented. So we wanted to make sure that we had early childhood, we had our Head Start, we had business people, just sole community members. We had teachers from every level. So K4, we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. A specials teacher, we had a library media representing art, music, library, and PE, and special education as well. Administrators from every level also were on the committee. We had 2 trustees that were actively involved in the committee. Not there to listen for input, but those 2 trustees were involved in the dialogue and part of the feedback that went into what this revision looks like for all of you. As we move on to page 15, you can see the different times that we met. As part of this process, though, I think it's important for everyone to know that we had the task force going on 4 committees, but also on the side, we've had meetings with our directors here, our operational leaders that you're seeing here in the boardroom. And then also we've had 2 meetings with our building administrators on the academic side. We have another meeting coming up next Tuesday. The reason why that is so important is because what happens here from the board, then we bring back to that entire team, and then we start to put more specifics into play. So if the health orders say this, here's what our plan's going to be. And we can provide those details that our community is searching for. In moving forward on page 16, 17, and 18 are a glossary of terms that we have put together that come from the Centers for Disease Control website, and then also terms that we believed that our community needed to know and be able to refer to if there was something that was unclear for them. Going to page 19, I'm going to go ahead and shift to safety and wellness, knowing that communication is embedded all the way through the plan. The most important thing that really drives for our district here is knowing that we are doing everything that we can for our students and for our staff to feel physically, emotionally, and socially secure and safe in this plan. That's probably going to be the biggest thing that's on the hearts and the minds of our staff, for all of our trustees as you review this plan, and then also our parents. Every person that enters one of those buildings is somebody's grandchild. It is somebody's loved one. So the lens that goes through this, and I cannot stress this enough, We all have someone that is at risk, whether it's that person in our household, it could be someone that we work with. And so we are surrounded by this COVID-19, but we need to know that every precaution that Sweetwater number 1 can put into place, we have done so. For page 19 and 20, in the month of June, the Centers for Disease Control came out with a 56-page document that was recommendations for our schools to reopen. We know that there's a lot of information. We're surrounded by it on the media, and it changes all the time. We've heard that there's a checklist that's coming. We'll keep an eye on those things. But our lens, when we look at this plan, it is not a political stance. It is not about what's going to be most popular for people, but it's about instructing kids in the safest environment that we can, knowing that schools need to be open for in-person instruction, and then also provide some of those virtual opportunities, which we are able to do so for those families and students that need it. So on page 19 and 20, these are a synthesis of the original CDC guidelines. And you can go ahead and you can read through as needed. What's important on page 20, a couple of things I'd like to highlight. We need plans so that we can pivot and turn very quickly. And I cannot say enough what a great job all of our staff, our parents, and community did last spring. That was crisis education. It's very different from the plan that we are proposing here to move forward and going into the fall. We truly turned our district upside down and moved it the other way in about 2 days. We had things up and ready to go for everyone. What we are trying to do moving forward is not crisis or trauma instruction. It is truly a plan to move us forward so that we can move knowing that things are going to change probably on this one in a matter of hours. We're not going to have, we had spring break a little bit when we rolled out the plan. It was truly a couple days after that and we were ready to go. On this one, as we come out of COVID, things can move in depending upon what our local county health officer can say. And if we have a confirmed case, we'll go into that a little bit. So we're not going to have the days that we had back in the spring. We were fortunate for spring break. Here we are not going to have those items and that timeline. So we have got to have our plan in place, and I believe we are ready to do that as much as possible. On page 20, it's going to be very important that the school day begins at home, of course, with our families. We are asking that daily screening is conducted by our parents and guardians before their kids leave the house. So if their student has a cough, shortness of breath, a fever of 100.4 or higher, or a sense of a fever, a sore throat, chills, new loss of taste or smell, muscle or body aches, we know that the primary piece for this starts at home. So for our parents, if you have a student that has allergies per se, and you know that's what that may be is allergies, that is very different than keeping an eye on these screeners right here. Sometimes we know that as a parent, Dr. Mom, you know your kids, you know them, you know when something is out of the ordinary for them, and you need to trust yourself. It begins at home. But from there, on page 21, those symptoms can continue. So at home, you may have nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. You may have a runny nose. Some of the most common symptoms are any of those: fever, runny nose, diarrhea, and vomiting, or unusual fatigue. Please keep an eye on that. The idea, and we'll go into the attendance policy a little bit. I'll touch on that. I know Mrs. Bolton will go into that a little bit as well. But if you have a sick student, please don't send them to school. Please do not. We want to work with our families as much as we can, but you know your kiddo, and if they have any of those symptoms on there, please keep them back. We're going to work with our families, and that attendance policy that we adopted last summer, there are provisions in there that allow us to do that. And so we don't need to adjust our attendance policy, but it's got to be put into place with open and honest communication with our families. And that comes from our parents to the building administrator to our school nurses as well. So first thing, screening starts at home with our parents. On page 21, 22, and 23, 24, and it goes all the way through a waiver, which I believe ends on page 28. To give you a quick debrief about what this section is. This portion has already been approved by our local and state health officers. These are for district activities and athletics that coordinate with the Wyoming High School Activities Association. They run some of the summer practices and programs that required the district to have this process ready to go before the start of school. So to go through very quickly, the measures I can verify for you to get a process approved by our state and local, it was very, very intensive. I can tell you that the revisions that we sent back and forth were numerous to make sure that they were okay. Our guidelines going through. So as I search on page 22, Zach, if we moved forward, when we start, our kids are screened by their parents. They are also screened when they come in to the school building for a practice before anything begins. We brought our temperature kiosk in, and actually Stephanie and Dan are going to show us about the temperature kiosk up there in front. We think that would be a good thing that our trustees could see, and then also for our families at home. Also, when our athletes come in, there is a code on page 22 that you can see in there that it also asks the kids those questions about the screener questions. Do you have a fever? Do you have chills? Do you have nausea, diarrhea? Any of those same things that they're asked at home. They're going to be asked those again before they go every single time to a practice. They are asked those. It also walks through the guidelines of what our coaches and sponsors are required to do. All of their plans for their skills and drills, which must be individual. We have not received any approval for contact sports at all at this time. If they change in the health orders, then our coaches submit the next set of plans to their building athletic director and principal. They approve those before any of those changes occur. So we are following the orders to the T as much as we can. On page 23, we also have a screener and a notice of understanding that all students in any activity or an event for Wyoming High School Activities Association that they have to complete. It is some of those things that we wanted to make sure that our kids knew and understood. Don't touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth. You've got to be careful about doorknobs, hand washing, just the exposure, all those little things that we've heard a million times over the last 6 months, but we want to make sure that our students are trained. There is a chain of communication on page 26 This flow chart Stephanie put together for us. It is very good, and I'd like to talk about this because it goes into some of those questions about what do you do if you have a possible exposure? What do you do if you have a confirmed case? And we have that ready to go for what's happening now in the summer. But this same type of process is what would happen as we go through during the school year. So if you have a potential exposure, then the adult, the teacher, is notified, or the adult that is working with the student. They notify the building administrator right away. We notify our nurse in the school district. We have nurses at all of our schools. There are some cases where they can't be in 2 schools at once, but they're only a phone call away. For the majority of time, our nurses are on site in our schools. That communication goes from the administrator over to the lead nurse. They in turn contact our local county health nurse. And that's where that communication comes in. So a lot of those questions that people want to know, what do you do if you think you might have a case? What do you do if a person or staff member has symptoms? It goes directly to the building administrator, to our nurses. They get in contact with our local county health officers, and truly from there, they will let us know what that plan is. They will tell us on contact tracing. They will take hold of that. They will contact those people. So the question about who gets quarantined, who has to go home for 14 days, who has to go and get tested, that comes from our local county health officer. And that communication loop, our director of community nursing, that comes back in over here to Nicole or myself, and then we share that information back out. So a lot of those questions that people want to know really come from our county health nurse to our nurses to building administration. On pages 27 and 28, this is the waiver for school-sponsored activities and athletics. We do not need a waiver for our students attending school because under the state statute, we are required to provide education for our kids, which is what we are trying to do here. So the waiver is for school-sponsored activities and athletics. Under school operations, we're going to get to some sections where we have facilities and transportation, and so we'll have our directors talk about this a little bit, but I'm going to do the lead in for it, and then we'll give them an opportunity. We are applying as a district for federal CARES funds. That is, as you might know, that is the federal money, the grant money that is coming through. It's filtering from the federal government through the Wyoming Department of Ed, and then districts have to apply for that. We have started that process. I think that's important for our trustees and our community to know. And then we hope to have that finalized and submitted at the first of next week to get that in. We're very fortunate that we have 5-year plans. On a fiscal note, I know we're doing the budget tonight as well, but I cannot say thank you enough for what Scott and Gina and that whole department does, and also for every one of our directors, because we require a vision for 5 years out. You've got to have a short-term goal and a long-term goal. And if we didn't have that ready to go with our capital projects, these supplies and equipment that we need, we would have been in deep trouble, because the planning for this started last spring about how are we going to open this up. As you can see on pages 29 and 30, and I'll let Mr. Celeroli talk here on this as well. This is with approval from our board. This is all of the equipment that we have ordered as of today. There's a couple other items that we've got on the addendum that's going to come before you about some hotspots. And Stephanie can talk about our Wi-Fi plan in getting that going. But it's very important for everyone to note about the extent of what we are trying to do to keep everybody safe. Dan can talk about the masks, the face shields, all those items. The swivel cameras, we'll go into those a little bit, but Dan, go ahead.
Okay, let's start with what we're doing for the employees and the students. Right off the bat, well, almost everything is for the employees and the students, but right off the bat, for their own personal protection, one of the things that we're doing is we've ordered enough face shields and enough masks, and we have continuous use masks. Oh, sorry. Now I'm too tall. We have continuous use masks, and everyone will get 2 of those. We have disposable masks, and we will issue those out as they need them. We realize that not everybody can keep their mask washed up day after day, so when they do need them, they'll be able to get them from their front office. A lot of the teachers had requested face shields, full face shields, so I did some research into the full face shields. Face shields actually offer you 97% protection. It was a good, viable option because one of the things that was concerning me was, okay, I know that they'll handle some of the larger fluid drops, but what do you do with the aerosols that they claim can stay in the air up to 10 hours? What we've done is we went back, ASHRAE has referred us to CDC guidelines, and between the two, what they've come up with, all of our buildings have to be on 100% outside air. So every one of our buildings, this one, for instance, we have the ability to take the air from the outside, run it right through our building, and it exhausts at the same rate that it inputs. We also, because of the cold, and when it gets cold in the winter time, for energy savings, you can't do that. No building that I know of, and I've been in mechanical contract most of my life, delivers enough energy to heat up outside air that you're bringing in at negative, 0, and try to heat it up to 120 degrees so you can heat a room. So right now, we're dumping pure outside air in, outside air out. It costs a little bit more money to run the schools that have air conditioning, but it's what the CDC recommends. As we move forward, what we're looking into, and I've got, we're getting prices and installation for UVC lighting. UV lighting is one of the few things in UVC in particular that we know of that will kill just about every kind of virus and bacteria. These go prior to your filters. We could have stepped up to HEPA type filters, but when you put more resistance in the mechanical systems, that brings a whole nother set of issues. So, and then plus not only that, but then I have to have my folks geared up for hazmat disposal of filters that potentially have the virus on them. So the UVC lighting is been recommended by both CDC and ASHRAE. ASHRAE runs the standards. You also see them reflected in international code councils. The other thing that we're given for the for some of the teachers is anybody who wants a face shield. We have enough face shields for every teacher. We have enough masks, 2 masks, like as I said. We're offering the same thing to the students. Today's order, in fact, I'm waiting for a lady to come back, but we will have enough face shields and reusable masks and disposable masks to supply students to whatever their preference is. One of the nice things about the face shields is they can leave the face shields in the classrooms at the end of the day, and we will come in and disinfect them. So that's kind of a plus. Sometimes, trying to wash your mask and then have it back for the next day, they get lost, they get, whatever. There's all kinds of excuses. When I walk through the classrooms at the end of the year and see lost and found, and I see coats, I wonder how long is it going to take before they lose their mask? Some of the other things that we're looking at, we've got negative air pressure machines, and this was really good, something that I never thought of, and it was brought up by the school nurse, Kim Kessler. And she said, what if we have an issue where we have somebody who comes to school, they test positive, what do we do with them? Where do we put them? Well, when the weather is nice, like it is now, we can do a positive airflow into that room. And if it's a room that has a window on it, you open the windows and the air blows out. If it doesn't have a window, we increase the return air to that room. But there's also a lot of rooms that are internal. The high school, the nurses area is internal. There's some rooms you just can't get away from it. That's the design of the building. So what we have purchased is these negative pressure machines. We as in maintenance, we have negative air pressure machines that we use for asbestos abatement. They're huge. They have HEPA filters in. You pull in air. Ours, larger ones are over 2,000 CFM per unit. What I did was I ordered these smaller ones that are about 500 CFM per minute. We can take those, we can put those in a room, we can vent them up into the return air, because the return air is either going to go straight outside when the weather is nice, or it's going to be recirculated through the UV lighting. So either way, we don't have to worry about contaminating any air. So we ordered quite a few of those. As far as one of the questions was, what's going to be our protocol? One of the things that we've done is normally during a normal school year, the lead custodian comes in or the custodians come in, they work split shifts. They come in the morning, make sure the school is ready, and then they kind of go home, and then they come in towards the end of the day and they work and take out the trash and do their end of the day cleaning. We will now have a custodian in all the schools, and this affects more of the elementaries because the high school and junior high have staff on all day. We will have somebody in from the beginning of school to the end of school. And so they will be disinfecting, they will be cleaning as needed in the certain, whichever areas need their attention. One of the things that I was surprised to see is CDC is actually asking that playground equipment be sanitized in between uses. So we'll have to get with principals and kind of work schedules out with that, because normally it's kids out, kids back in, another group out. So we're going to have time to go out there and just kind of spray a disinfectant on. Now we do have foggers, and we'll be using those foggers on a regular basis, depending on the cohort too. Because if we end up just going to school 5 days a week, it's not that big of a deal on setting up a schedule to use these big time disinfectants. If we go to one of the cohorts, then we'll just have to increase how many times we use the foggers in those classrooms based on the cohorts that we're going to be shifting into. Okay, so all of our schedules have to be flexible. If they're not flexible, they're not going to work. Some of the other things that we're doing is, we mentioned the scanners. The scanners, we take temperatures of all our staff prior to coming to work. Before they come to work, come in the door, their temperatures are taken. I believe transportation and so is food service doing the same thing. So we have been kind of taking these precautions prior to. One of the other questions that I thought I heard too was what kind of chemicals are we going to be using? Okay, so we have two kinds of chemicals. One is an alcohol base, which is recommended by CDC to be at least 65% of alcohol. Okay, we have ordered cases of that stuff. The other thing that we have, and we've always had, is non-alcohol base. Now, the non-alcohol base contains a quaternary family chemical. And this quaternary family of chemicals, it's got a real long name, has been used forever. If you look in Dial soap, the antibacterial, antivirus killer in Dial soap, if you have the pump, is the main active chemical in almost all non-alcohol based disinfectants. Okay. So we have had tons of that stuff. The Purell that we use, Purell is actually put out by Gojo. And we looked into those and saw what the chemical composition was. The active chemical is the same. It's alkali, ethyl, benzyl, sodium, ammonium, sodium chloride. Okay, so we use that. That's one of the main uses that we have is the non-alcohol base. So we will be getting alcohol base for in the classrooms. We'll be using the non-alcohol base for like athletics, office buildings. The thing about the non-alcohol base is it leaves a little bit of a film on your hand. And if you're working in an office where people are giving you, things all day long and you're touching them, you do have a little bit of a protection. Where the alcohol base is, hey, if you're going into a class, a couple of pumps in your hand, you rub it, it evaporates off. You don't have to worry about if somebody next to you has asthma, because it's within seconds it's evaporated off to you. So I really did try to do as much research on everything that we have to make sure, would I send my grandson, my granddaughter into these schools? I have severe heart issues. Would I want to go into these schools? So we're all parents, we're grandparents, or we're spouses of somebody. We don't want anyone that we know and love and care about, and we care about everybody here. We do want to make sure that those schools are in good enough shape and safe enough that, yes, Dan Celaroli with his grandkids would walk to any school and not feel the threat of COVID virus. And if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to contact me, except not for the next couple of days because I'm on vacation. Okay.
Do you want to talk about what you're doing for technology and then also the Wi-Fi?
Sure. Okay, so I am Stephanie Tolman, and I'm the Chief Information Officer for Sweetwater County School District Number 1. And I just wanted to share a little bit of information with everyone on what we're doing for technology. So as you all know, last year we were able to send iPads home with our kindergarten through 3rd graders and laptops home with our 4th through 12th graders. We'll have that same plan this year with all of the students taking devices home from the start of school. We are investing in laptop cases for our students with the technology phone number on them, and also iPad cases, the durable cases, so that if you have a drop, you don't have to worry about them getting broken or shattered. Just wanting to protect the investment and make sure that kids have the access that they need to the technology if they have to go home or if health requires them to stay home. The other thing that we are that we purchased for our teachers is a swivel robot, which utilizes an iPad and a lanyard that the teachers wear, and they can actually do instruction, and the iPad will record or live broadcast them as they're teaching. So students at home, it could be very much the same as sitting in the classroom and watching the teacher instruct. Finally, another concern that we had was the internet at home for our students. We're very thankful to the partnership we were able to form with All West this past spring, and in the hope of making sure that all of our students have what they need if we have to turn on a dime or if a student ends up quarantined. The goal is to make sure that all of our students are connected from the start of the school year till the end of the school year. We are hopefully tonight approving the purchase of 75 Khajiit hotspots. So as students fill out or families fill out their updated registration information when that opens and their free and reduced lunch applications, they will be able to also apply or ask for assistance with internet so that we can get them what they need to stay connected all the time. Finally, the scanners probably.
Yeah, Stephanie, quick question. So on the internet, our goal then, just to emphasize, is that families that qualify would have internet available to them on the very first day of school, August 17th. That way, no matter what happens throughout the course of that school year, they will always be connected. And then you don't have to worry about getting kids up and running. They'll have what they need to get them going and then have that accessibility. So it's really helping for any of our families that are at risk or struggle in any matter whatsoever.
Yes, and the beauty of these items, we know there's a lot of mobility in the school district. So those families that maybe move or students who travel back and forth between parents, they could actually take this device with them where they go so that they'll have access no matter what household they're in or if they end up moving.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Jackman.
Stephanie, I have one question.
Yes.
It's regarding like the bandwidth in the
Yes.
buildings. Have we done any tests to ensure that we've got plenty for teachers to be teaching while
Oh, we're
students
good.
are?
The buildings were good. We're very
I
fortunate.
know, but that's a question.
Yes,
that's been
no.
asked, so.
Yep, absolutely. The buildings, we are very fortunate that we have our own fiber that runs from the cab out to each of the schools. And then we have a direct connection with the state. We really haven't had many issues. Farson, of course, has their own special, unique setup, as Lenny knows. And Wamsutter's a little bit different, but as far as the bandwidth in our in-town schools, we're sitting really good, especially with the rewire that we did at Rock Springs High School, North Park and Westridge and Walnut, and we are currently rewiring Rock Springs Junior High. So those are the places with the most kids that we run into issues, and I think we're going to be good for next year with our wireless.
Do you guys want to do the temperature? You want to?
Yeah, I'll scan. I'll do the temperature. Okay. Don't film me while I'm walking across. Okay, so these are the scanners that Dan was able to get ordered for our school district. How many did we get, Dan? 130? So we have 130 of these, and they're available as a desktop or in a stand form. And we'll be able to have these at the entrances of our schools so that as folks walk in, they don't have to touch, they'll just be identified, and then a green or a red light if they're good to enter the building or if their temperature's too high. So I will demonstrate. I'm going to turn it towards me a little bit.
Please face to the detector frame.
Okay, so it brought up my temperature. We saw that it was a green light and I'm able to enter the building. I'm not running a fever. And we are currently using these for our summer sports and athletics. Wait, I better talk about security because that always comes up. For all of the parents who are concerned about protecting their students' data, this is all housed internal in our network and definitely secure. It's not out on a cloud anywhere, and we also don't track or keep the student information just in cases where the nurses might need it. So, do you guys have any questions on the scanner or anything else I covered?
Any questions?
Stephanie, I think one thing, Mrs. Jellicoe, if I may.
Go ahead.
One question that has come up a lot, Stephanie, about the kiosks is if we have one of our kids that comes in and they get scanned and they have a fever, what's going to happen with them? And so I think it's important that everybody knows that we would never put a student in a position to make them feel secluded or to be embarrassed or any of those things. If they have a fever when they come into school, the priority is to get them some attention, some medical attention, and get a hold of the parents.
Mm-hmm.
That information is actually medical information, so it's not shared, it's confidential. But the idea is if a student comes in with a fever, hopefully we don't have that because we need that screening that starts at home before we begin. But if we have a little one or one of our secondary students that has that, we will make sure we get in touch with our nurse and be able to have that student go into a room with an adult that is physically safely away. If a student has a fever, they will have a mask put on immediately. And then we will be contacting the parents. And then if needed, we'll get a hold of, we'll follow that flow chart. So if we needed be, the nurse will get in touch with the county nurse, and then we have that communication loop that's already built in. But it's important that our parents know if you have a child and one of your students that comes in and they're not feeling well and you didn't catch it in the morning and something came up, I mean, our intent is to never hurt a student, but notify the parents and get the child what they need.
And I will say that the scanners do notify right now, just because I'm the administrator, if somebody flags for a high temperature. One day, Kelly's we were playing with it with
110.
our coffee cups and trying to see what we could do to sabotage it. And we actually get an email with a picture. It'll also send a text message. So we see who was flagged, what the issue was. And then, yeah, her coffee cup was kind of fun.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Reedy?
actually, Mr. Vitolo.
Mr. Vitolo.
All I can see is Zach right now, and he's looking real good. But the one thing that I don't know, and maybe you just answered that. So the student walks in. Do they have to do some kind of a barcode or some kind of a code and then get their temperature taken, or does the temperature get taken and then the picture gets taken and we process that?
Okay, I can actually answer that one. For the summer activities, they do have a barcode that they scan before they come in order to answer that quick check for checking themselves. That will not be a part of when we go back to school as of this point. So that right now, the barcode is for the pre-screener before students come in for their summer activities. And then they get their temperature taken. Does that answer your question, Mr. Batolo?
It does. And am I correct in assuming that when the machine goes off, there will be a person that kind of very professionally leads them aside, and then they go into a place where we can have a conversation about their temperature?
Mr. Batolo, this is Kelly. I'm going to go ahead and answer that one. Yes, that answer is correct. So the idea is when students arrive to school, when the 130 kiosks were ordered to come in, we took a look at the entrances of the schools. And so right now, we have all the kids coming in at a single point of entry. And so with the kiosks that we have the availability so that they can come in different doors of the school. So for example, Rock Springs High School has several doors. They would have more kiosks than a smaller elementary school would be. So we would have the kiosks set up at different doors with staff that are available. Of course, we've got to make sure that the beauty of those kiosks is that they're handless. And that was one of the really a key factor in the state health officer taking a look, because you don't want to put the person that's actually taking the temperature at risk for anything. And that's what's nice. So you have adult supervision there, but also they have that opportunity to make sure that they're safe as well. So when they come in through different doors, you can actually get your temperature. I know Zach is looking great and you didn't get a chance to see it, but you can actually get a temperature taken really quickly in probably 1 to 2 seconds. And so the idea here is that we can get kids in different doors, move them through quickly. And so that we know it's not going to always be July and the wind blows here and it's probably going to get cold. So the idea is to get kids in and get them where they need to be in a safe way. So they'll have screening at home from their parents, and then they'll have screening from the kiosk machine when they actually come into the building when school begins.
Madam
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question if Mr. Patolo is.
Mrs. Thompson.
When we were going through the task force, one question that kept coming up was, and we saw it ourselves, well, I experienced myself when I had sat in the car a little bit too long and then I tried to come in and I was too high, so I had to step to the side for a little while and let my temperature go down, and then I was fine. Are these equipment, is that helping with that? Are we eliminating that problem?
It's funny that you bring that up because the day we set it up in Kelly's office, I went and sat in my car with the heater going on the super hot day and then raced back in just to see if it's my goal to trick things and see where the fail limit is. But this has been accurate for the most part. We have had some random high temperatures that aren't accurate, like the 110 in Kelly's, but I think, we've been working through some of those issues. But I did try to fake it out and was unsuccessful.
Okay, I was just curious because I could see just a whole line of kids who were hanging on the bus just a little bit too long, and they would all be pulled to the side and have to wait. So if that were to happen, could the temperature just be taken like maybe 5 minutes later?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think they're actually doing, in some cases at the high school, I've been getting just a few alerts for some of the summer folks, and I think that they just rescan in a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you.
We have also ordered actual thermometers, those digital thermometers too. So that might be another way of checking that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one question. It's kind of
Mr.
been brought up
Chairman?
and I was thinking about it. Is there a way, do these systems log who comes in and at what times?
Hmm.
And I'm imagining for, our staff, their contract starts at 7:05, they come in at 7:06 and they get scanned in. I don't want them to be ostracized or punished, if that makes sense, because it's getting logged. They're coming in at 7:06 instead of 5.
He's talking about time.
Oh, no, there's definitely going to be, I don't think time will be used as a punishment in any way, especially as we first start learning through this process. And down the road, they could be potentially be used for attendance, but that is definitely not the intention of the devices right now. It's for our student and staff safety.
All right, thank you.
I've got one question.
Any other questions, Mr. Hay?
You said there's the barcode,
Mhm.
and so for that, the kids have to have a cell phone, correct? And that's only for the sports side. But what do we do? You said maybe we would have to do a barcode later. Is that?
I don't see that happening. I
Okay,
think
good.
that's just for the sports, and that was working with Wyoming High School Athletics Association that was developed. I do know in Farson, some of the kids maybe don't have access,
Mhm.
so Leanne is setting up an iPad and sending it out on the bus for
Good.
those students.
That was it.
And we learned that gloves work on iPads.
Any other questions?
Okay, let's proceed then.
Okay. At this point, before we start moving on the next couple of pages, if we could, I have Angie here as well, so I think it's important that people know what was ordered to support for our nutrition services, and then also the process that she uses for her staff before they come to work, and cleaning and food preparation. I think that would be worthwhile for our community to know that as well. And then we'll shift that over for transportation so that Joe can talk about that, because I know busing is very important for our parents.
Hi, my name is Angie Aramosby. I'm the Director of Nutrition Services. First off, I would like to say that we have available to everyone in the community, all the students through the ages 18 and under, free meals through August 31st. So that will continue through August 31st, just so everyone knows. After that, it will go back to, if you're a paid student, you would pay, free would be free, reduced would be reduced free costs. With that being said, I would like to encourage everyone to fill out a free and reduced application. That's an annual thing. I think sometimes people think that automatically rolls over, and it does not. That's something that has to be done every single year. We're going to be getting the online application up and running. We do have paper forms, but I would really, again, like to encourage people to use the online application as well. We'll be sending out a notification once that is up and ready to go. Even if you think that you don't, for those of you at home, if you don't think you qualify, please apply, because it helps out Title I, it helps out other departments with things as well. So I just think that it's good to fill, it can help you out. I just think sometimes people assume that they don't qualify, and maybe there's that little bit of a benefit where you may qualify for reduced. So it can't hurt to put in an application. So, and the other thing is with the Wi-Fi as well, with technology. That's another huge piece, because if you qualify for free meals, is it reduced as well, Steph? So free and reduced meals, then you would benefit by getting the Wi-Fi through technology. So there are a lot of perks to filling out an application. So again, I strongly encourage everyone to fill out an online application, and we'll be getting that information out within the next week or so. With that being said, too, with our staff, the directive that I've given my staff, if they're within 6 feet of one another, that they wear masks while they're working. They go out on the buses, and then they have a table. They've also been given a bucket that has a sign to let people coming to the sites know, stay here, and then they can put the meals on the tables. And then after, they'll ask that person how many meals would they like. They put those meals on the table, and then after those people retrieve the meals, then the table is disinfected with something supplied by the custodial department. So we are sanitizing everything. Our staff, when they get in, they wash their hands, they clock in, and then they wash their hands again, because we don't have hand sanitizer right by. We have sinks, so they're just washing their hands a lot. But just so you know, our staff is following all the food safety guidelines, and it's a great process, I think, that they've been working really hard. I want to say we've served over 300,000 meals since all of this began.
Wow.
So that's a chunk. Something I want to address with the comment that was made about student allergies. I can't stress this enough. If your student has an allergy, there's a medical form that needs to be filled out, and it needs to be signed by a physician. So if your student does have a food allergy, please contact the school nurse. They have the ability to get these forms or get them to you so they can be completed. They're willing to help you out. We do have processes in place. We've been down that road before with peanut allergies and everything else, that we do have systems in place. So I don't want any parents to worry if their student does have a peanut allergy or any type of allergy whatsoever. Right now, I know there's a question about bringing home goods or baked goods from home, and that's not allowed at this time. What else am I missing?
What about lunch, if they want to bring in cold lunch?
So they can bring cold lunch as well. Yeah, I mean, students can definitely bring a cold lunch. So again, as long as, parents communicate with staff at the schools, we can definitely, keep your kids safe. I know there's been schools where there has been a kid with a peanut allergy, and the teachers work with the families, with the, that are in that class with that student with the allergy, because we definitely, our top priority is to keep them safe. So just so you know, that is our number one priority. The other thing that we have coming into place, we are getting grab and go flex carts. So we'll be able to serve hot and cold meals throughout the year, throughout the entire school. So we're really prepared, no matter, what avenue this takes, whether we're serving kids in the classroom, through the cafeteria. We really do have good processes in place already. So we'll be getting those carts this Friday, and we'll get those all put together. So we're ready to roll, literally. So we're good with all of that. I think we've got good systems in place with everything else, lots of hand sanitizer. Even if kids are going to be coming through the lines, I was speaking with Dan the other day about having hand sanitizers. So if kids have to put in their numbers, there will be hand sanitizer right around there, so they can use the hand sanitizer before they punch their numbers in, if that's the route that we go. Obviously, kids would be 6 feet apart. We'll have X's, on the floor. Again, we have ideas for every single way that this could look. The other thing is, I contacted the state, WDE, and they have said that if there are students virtually learning, we would have the option of delivering meals to the bus sites where those children would be. We would need to, definitely know who the kid is. This is where, children that aren't enrolled in school, they wouldn't be able to get a meal. So that would be the only difference. They have to be enrolled to receive a meal.
And
so we would.
That's after August.
Yeah, that would
So
start September 1st. Yeah, so as of September 1, that's when that would start. And so we would have a roster of students, and Joe, we can work together with getting rosters for your buses, so we know what students ride the buses. So that's another thing we can do. So we do have.
What do the lunches look? I mean, like the lunch periods, what do they look like in terms of students going to, cafeteria?
during the school day,
cafeterias during
Carol?
the school day, whether it's breakfast or lunch. What does that look like?
Sure. That question honestly depends on what the health orders are going to
Okay.
be at the end of July, so that we know when we make that final plan going in. Ideally, it would be perfect if we could communicate what that final plan would be on July 31st, right there at that end, because August 3rd, that Monday, is when Stephanie will be able to go in, update contact information into Power School. They can fill out free or reduced forms. I mean, everything starts to roll so people can plan. So specifically about, what does it look like? Can they eat in the cafeteria? Do they have to eat in the classrooms? All those kind of questions. The honest answer for that right now is we don't know, because we don't know what those orders are going to be. We have plans so that we have the equipment, so whichever way that needs to go, we're able to make that work. But to say today that they're all going to be able to eat in the cafeteria, we're not able to give that, because we truly don't know.
And I assume that would be the same, because I know at the high school, some of the students that brought lunches were able to use like microwaves and things like that to heat up things that they may have brought from home. So I'm assuming that's the same situation we are with those methods too, is we have to wait and find out what the orders are at that time.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're waiting to
Any
find
other
out, but I believe we're
questions?
ready though.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman?
I'm thinking of the junior high specifically, where I think we have the most amount of students going through lunch in the least amount of time. If it turns out that the 20 minutes aren't enough, do we have an idea for adjusting the schedule there to give them
That
time?
honestly, so we're going to be meeting with the principals. Kelly, maybe you can answer that better than I can as far as lunch schedules are concerned.
Sure. I think depending upon which way they go, I think it's something that we take into consideration, and we take a look at. the biggest thing going into this whole thing, it's going to take in a normal school year. We kind of joke about it a little bit, but sometimes it takes almost until Christmas to get people in the routines of what it's like in a day of school. And so when we go into this, every day is going to be unique. And so we've got to just kind of take a deep breath and say, you know, it might be a little bit slower on the first couple of weeks. Maybe we need to tweak a little bit. But I can tell you that the schools run pretty efficient, and they can get a lot of kids through in a fairly short amount of time. It may be a little bit different on this one, but I think we're prepared and we can adjust as we go. And I think the whole key is expect change. It's going to happen. We've got to be prepared. And then once we know more, we communicate more.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
While we're talking about some of the different departments, I'd like Mr. Klingenpeel to talk about busing.
Good evening. Is this on? So we've been working all summer. So we have procedures in place for the staff. They change sometimes daily, so we have to change our procedures as situation changes. But once we get full staffing back, we'll be following the same procedures that everybody else is following. We'll have a kiosk. We'll have our staff scanning each day. Dan's going to put up hand sanitizers for me that are actually mounted to the wall. The staff will come in, sanitize, punch in, sanitize again. So we'll have those procedures in place also. Thank you. As far as our transportation procedures, we're going to do everything that we can with the students. We're going to make every effort to follow CDC guidelines. Is that always going to be possible? No, there's going to be alternative seating in there. And when there is alternative seating on the buses, the students will have to wear masks. So the question about the Farson one, there's not going to be any change on that. That'll pretty much go as planned. That bus isn't completely full anyhow, but the students may have to wear masks. All right. As far as sanitizing, we're going to be sanitizing the building every day, a couple times a day. The drivers will be sent because most of them drive tiered routes. So they do an elementary route, a high school route, or whatever. They're going to sanitize at least twice each day. And I'm going to encourage them to sanitize more if they have time. Sometimes they have time between routes. I'll have them sanitize a third or a fourth time. So they'll be sanitizing. Somebody asked about the chemical that we use. It's out in the paperwork there, but essentially it's a neutral sanitizer. What you're doing, it's half an ounce to every gallon of water. And we went an extra step. We have a 55-gallon drum. I actually have a mixer. You press a button and it gives you the exact ratio that you need. So there's no mix up in mixing the ratios or anything. And people don't have to handle that sanitizer. That's about all I can think of. Everything's laid out in there, but if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Will there be sanitizer as they get on the bus? I mean, will there be sanitizer available at that point?
I haven't figured out how to have a sanitizer available unless we have little bottles for them that we can hand out with the mask or something that they can sanitize when they get on the bus. But there's no way that I can really attach it to the bus. And that would be about 100 dispensers that we would have to do that with because we got right around 100 buses. That's a good question.
Mrs. Jellicoe?
Yes.
One of the things that I think would be helpful for our parents to know is when we had the reentry task force, when we met the 4 times, every time that we held one of our meetings, we really wanted to learn by doing together. So in our first meeting, Joe brought in some of our district buses. He had them all cleaned up and ready to go before we got in there because he's been serving meals with Angie all summer. But what he did was he actually had the seats marked about where a person could sit and then following the CDC guidelines and how many seats in between before the next person could sit. And so for some of us, we haven't been on a school bus since we were kids. And so that's really a good experience for our whole task force. We went out, we had masks on so we could see what that would be like. We got on the buses so we could actually visualize what that would be like for their child if they were riding the buses. It really put into perspective about what that would be like for what these guidelines really mean. And I say that because sometimes it's hard for us to really see, okay, what does that look like in practicality in a classroom? So another example that we did in the task force was Dan came in here before and he had tape on the floors about what that would be in the square footage of a normal average classroom in any of our schools. And then we had the tables set up so that you could see the 6 feet of distancing where people had to fit. And then also so we looked around the room and there was a question on there about what's our class sizes. So our K through 3 are 23 students. 4th grade and higher are 27. And the point of that activity was, so as adults, we all looked around the room and we said, okay, under those guidelines, within that taped area, we were all spaced out where we needed to be. And then, okay, if we had to take 23 of us and we had to go inside that blue tape, could we do that and then still be within 6 feet apart? So it's kind of like you've got to be squished into the here, but then remain apart. And so what was so significant and strong about that was all those recommendations came to light about what is being asked on schools, not just Sweetwater 1, but all schools across the country, and why we don't want to get hung up. And I'm just going to say we don't want to get hung up on masks. Some people, we've read the comments, and some parents are, my student is not going to go if they have to wear one. Other parents feel, well, my student's not going to go if they don't have to wear one. And we respect that, absolutely. But I think at the end of the day, if our health orders are dictating those things, and Joe kind of touched on that. And so I want to extend on that. Joe, I appreciate you saying that. We have to do this as a medical concern. And I think the district has really taken steps we've got the 2 masks that we've ordered in that are cloth masks. They have the thread count that was recommended. We have disposable masks. We have face shields for our staff, face shields for our students as well. Casey has special face shields for if we have special services students and they have unique needs so that they are protected as well. So really, for us, we've got to do whatever we need to do to provide an education for our kids. And I think that's very important to know, whether they're riding a bus to school, because we've got to get them here, and we want them to be in our classroom. And we'll get into the options on virtual education here in just a minute. We'll talk about those too.
Any other questions?
There was a question that's been coming my way, and I don't know if we can answer it yet or not, but the question that I've been getting a lot is, would it help if parents volunteered to drive their kids to and from school to help alleviate the pressure on those buses?
Yes, we're going to request that if it's all possible and that's nationwide, if it's at all possible for a parent to bring their student to school, we are going to ask them to do that. It just gives us more room for social distancing on our buses. So yeah, that's a great question.
A follow-up question to that would be, we all know how congested the schools get during drop-off and pickup time. Is there any way we could maybe extend the pickup time a little bit longer to allow for parents to get to and from the school, specifically after school, to ensure the safety? So there's going to be, I would envision, more parents doing this, which would be even more congestion. And we know there are already schools that have problems with traffic concerns already.
I can. No, go ahead. I think that we have got all the answers and the schedule's perfectly figured out. I'm kidding, Steph. This is, that is, all of that stuff is being taken into consideration. There's nothing off of the table. It all is going to depend where we're at the time, the guidance that's coming in, and then we have some flexibility to be able to make decisions and adjustments in order to best meet the needs and still follow all the guidelines that were given.
Yeah, like I
So
said,
it's going to be dependent. Go ahead, Joe.
Like I said at the beginning, when we were all working, we're always constantly making changes because we're learning as we're doing. So that's going to be an area where, okay, this we think is going to work, but it may not work. And here's what we're going to do. So we're always going to be adjusting that.
Any other questions?
Manager. Manager.
Okay, Mr. Reedy?
That's Mr.
Oh,
Mickelson.
Max. Okay. Mr. Mickelson?
Hi, sorry. I just wanted to say that I know this seems very complicated, but there is not another district that is better prepared to handle this within the constraints of statutes. I mean, you guys should all be extremely proud of the work that you've done, and I certainly appreciate it. And I hope everybody understands how much you've done to safely provide education for our students and employees. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's proceed then.
Okay. Zach, if we went back into the plan, I'm on page, excuse me, 31 and 32. These are the school calendars for In-Town and Wamsutter, and then Farson is on a separate calendar for their 4-day week. And we have those in here, and I want to make sure that I'm really clear on it. We have those in here, as Nicole had mentioned. We have a lot of ideas on the table. Moving the calendar around is not something that I would recommend to our trustees at all, unless we absolutely need to. So school is scheduled to begin on August 17th, and we're going to be ready to roll for that. And we've got some ideas for to support our teachers as well. But we included those in the plan because we don't know what's gonna happen down the road. And we want everything to be successful, but we do know that we've got to be open if we needed to. While recognizing, you know, some of our families have plans for different things. We understand that very much. And again, not an option that I'm making a recommendation for at all, but that's the purpose of why those calendars are in there. August 17th is our first day of school. Okay, moving through there a little bit. We actually covered pages 33, 34, and 35. Those go into the details about the chemicals that we're using and the amount of time that the different departments are using to make sure that we can operate effectively. The page 36 goes into the last component, which is instruction and technology. Stephanie's started and went through about the technology piece. These right here on crisis learning versus online learning came to us as a suggestion on the task force. So when we did, I don't believe it was on a survey, but it was on maybe one of our activities we did in the task force where we asked for feedback from the committee. And this came from one of our teachers. And in her comment, she said, you know, I think it would be really important for people to understand that what we did last spring is very different from what we are proposing in our plan and going into the fall. And so Dr. Gamble was very gracious and put this together in just simple terms on front side only. And we also shared that today out on our Facebook page, but it's also been part of the documents that we've had posted on our website since the very beginning. And she really goes through about the situation and the choices that we have. You know, what were we up against last spring, but what are we proposing as we move forward? And really having an online program for families that are choosing to do so. What's the goal as we move forward for the fall? We know that our families are asking for choice. Some of our families we want to go in person and open up the doors and here we go. We know other families are asking us questions about what kind of virtual options can you provide? And we are going to be able to do that. We'll go into the tiers here in just a second. That information, more details on that is going to come for our families, but I think it's important for them to know we will have in-person school. We will have some virtual opportunities. So if there's families that need to keep their children home, we talked about the loved ones and at-risk family members that we've got. We're going to get those into place and get those details out. So I strongly encourage our families that make sure that they gather all the information before they start to make those decisions that they know best for their family. And Stephanie was talking about the swivel cameras, and now is probably a good time, I think, for me to elaborate on those. They are, and I know they're an item on the board agenda here for this evening, they are state of the art that we can provide to help our teachers. One of the questions that has come up, and as a teacher myself, the question has been, how am I going to teach in person? So I have in-person students here right now, but then how am I going to teach the students that are at home? And this could be your home for your tonsils are out. It could be your home because you might have a confirmed case and you need to be home. It could be through contact tracing that you need to be quarantined. The situations are different. But what those cameras allow is that opportunity to bridge what happens in the classroom to what happens at home. So whatever that reason may be, you are connected in there for the same way that Max was able to ask questions for us right here. We can communicate back and forth. We modeled that in the task force every time. We did one meeting that was solely in person, another one that was solely online, and then we did 2 meetings that were these hybrid options. And it can work. So it's going to support our teachers so they're not going to have to feel like they're doing double duty. Lesson plans for these students in school, and then lesson plans for students that are at home. They have the lanyard that Stephanie was talking about. I remember, having my keys around my neck all the time because otherwise I was going to lose them. But what that does is I'm able to teach my classroom in my classroom the way that I always would. And then the camera truly follows that lanyard around. And so regardless, you can do on your whiteboard, you can run your smartboard, you can, whether you're elementary, secondary, it works. And so if you have elementary kids on the floor in the morning, they do calendar, weather, any of those things, that camera opens up that opportunity for them. Also, it records your lessons. So part of the opportunities that Stephanie's getting us ready to go is, so if you are a virtual student, ideally it would be great if they could participate live. That's what the cameras allow us to do. We could do some of that last year through our Google platforms, but the cameras on there, they just make that thing real time. You're live streaming and you are answering questions just like you were there in class. But it also records for a lesson. So if you have a special services student at home, if you are solely virtual and you are not able to tune in at 8:45 for language arts, you can replay those lessons as needed. So if you need remediation, If you have IEP accommodations, it completely helps that situation. Also, I think for our teachers, we could not be prouder than what our teachers do. So the cameras are not an opportunity to spy on what our teachers are doing. It's not a big brother scenario. I'm just going to kind of answer some of those things. It is not any of those opportunities. When our teachers are doing great things, these cameras are to open up doors and to help them. The #1 district in the state of Wyoming for test scores has ordered 300 of these cameras. We're ordering them for every certified staff member so that they have those opportunities with the expectation that they use them for the lessons that they do. They record them, and we're going to have district expectations align with school expectations. That way, whether it's a high school class, an elementary class, everybody knows what's expected out there. So the cameras are not gotchas for our staff. They're not. They are doable in a pandemic, but they're also doable when we come out of this thing. They're a way that you can help support professional development. We would never hurt our teachers in a way that would make them less effective. This is to raise them up and to allow an opportunity to connect the classroom with our kids at home. And those cameras are key to doing that as we discuss some of those virtual opportunities. Back on that chart, just a couple of other things. Planning and training. The difference as we move in, we heard from our staff loud and clear. They told us we need and we want technology training. We want some more opportunities so that we are truly ready to get going. Jody has been working with our whole team, so she's just jumped right in. And we've got information coming out, I believe, tomorrow for professional development opportunities. We wanted to talk to our board and our community and our staff and then roll that out starting for tomorrow. So we know the biggest things for our staff is social, emotional on there. And I think we've got to say this. I know a lot of our staff, you're scared, you're worried about coming back. I know our parents, you're worried about coming back. So, you know, when we were home working, and I mentioned this scenario when we were in our task force, but I can speak for myself and say, you know, when I was home and we were going through everything that we were doing, that first day back into the office, into our schools, it is very, very awkward. That is the best way that I can describe that. That's how our staff is going to feel when they come back. They haven't been in a little bit here and there, you know, to grab materials, but I had them go home because I was worried about their safety and they needed to be home. But that opportunity for our teachers to be able to come back in is going to be weird. It is. That's the only way that I can say that. It's going to be weird for them. But I can tell you that the second day that they come in, it's not going to be that bad because they're going to see their colleagues and they're going to realize that their building is clean and it's safe, that as much as we can do. And every day after that, it's going to get a little bit easier. And that's how our kids are going to feel when they come into school. If our parents are good with it, our students will play and listen to what their parents say. So when they come in that first day, however that first day is going to look, and they go home and mom and dad are going to say, well, what did you do today? And they're going to look at them and they're going to say nothing, because that's what kids say. They say nothing. What'd you learn? Nothing. I mean, that's what they do. But you know what, moms and dads, they're going to know they're going to be okay. And that we're doing everything that we can. And the next day that they go in, every day after that is going to be okay. And that we're doing everything that we can. We can't stop COVID-19 from a confirmed case, but you can know that we're doing everything to prevent it. And when we look at other communities internationally, schools that have been successful, it really plays on the community being successful. Because if you can contain the outbreaks outside, it makes a difference when they come inside the school. So it really is going to take all of us. But when you look at schools that have had lower rates, if the community has lower rates, it falls right into the school because it's everywhere where we go, those measures. Back on the student work expectations for that, we talked about the guidelines and the expectations. We know our parents are asking for consistency, and our staff is asking for that too. They want to know exactly going in what is expected for this. That way, if I do have to shift, then I know what's expected of me one way or the other. This chart is excellent on talking about what we did last spring was a crisis. Moving out of that, we want to make that look very different as we move, whether it's in class or online. Okay, moving forward from there, let's go into what some of these tiers are going to look like. We've talked about it. Let's hit that now. Tier 1, and Zach, I'm on page 38. Tier 1, according to WDE requirements, is traditional school. So it's in-person instruction. It could have precautionary measures in place, whatever that may be, but its doors are open. Let's have school. Also, what we're going to be able to provide as a district, and we've talked about those cameras, is also virtual education, remote education. So if we have families out there that, for whatever their circumstance is, we will be getting requirements out and guidelines. So if they're considering that, they'll be able to take a look at what that might be for their family and then have that choice to make a decision whether coming into school is best meeting their needs, or is remote education, virtual education, something that they should consider. We would ask that our community be hold up for a minute on that so we can get those guidelines into place. We did not receive that information until Monday morning. So literally 2 days ago, we received that. And so it's going to take us a little bit to get that going. We've been waiting on that information. We are very thankful that that is coming through, because that will open up doors for families to consider online. And we as a district will be able to offer that from the very first day of school. Tier 2 is actually the what we're calling a hybrid model as part of the requirements. A hybrid model may be used in a couple different situations. If you had, and these are, and you could do what ifs a lot, but I want to just share just a couple of them. So if you had in a class that a student came in and we received word that they had a confirmed case, we work with our nurses, local county health, and they contact trace. And they let us know, they contact the families, but they let us know confidentially that there might be a little group of students, a couple of students, let's say 3, and they need to be quarantined at home. That is one scenario where this hybrid situation comes into play. So those 3 kiddos need to be at home. And that's where we provide the hybrid. So you've got in-person students, you've got 3 students that are going to be at home. You don't want to quarantine any more than what is needed. What if we had a situation on one of our athletic teams, say that we did, and we received information and they said, okay, well, it's affecting this group of students. Well, you never know. You might have a grade level that needs to be quarantined. You might only have a couple of kids in one class. You may have a teacher. So there were questions in there about what do you do if the teacher gets out or has a confirmed case. That's where the Department of Health comes in, and they run through that, and they will tell us what needs to happen for that employee, and then also who else is affected by that. So for a hybrid model, you might have a grade level, a class. It might be bigger than that. You might have something that happens in a school. We truly don't know, but you might. You might have a school that needs to go home, but that doesn't mean that the other 13 schools couldn't operate. So you want to be able to have as normal as you can, but also be able to take care of a situation when it occurs and quickly. These aren't the kind of things that we're going to have a week in between. You know, we're going to have that information and move it forward. There may be a health order that says cohort students from the first day of school. We don't know that, but we need to be able to talk about that. So we know that physical distancing is the way that we can help contain that virus. So it might be certain groups of students that come in on different days. So you may have in some of our options, you may have a cohort that comes in on an A-B schedule. An A may be Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesdays may be completely online for the district so that we can thoroughly clean. That's not to say that we're not going to clean on Monday or Tuesday. It means that we're going to have extra cleaning on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, you have another group, another cohort of students that come in. We don't want to do the hybrid scenario, unless we are required to do so. It's required as part of WDE and the plan. Another scenario may be from a different medical perspective. It could be a cohort runs 10 days. So if we're required to do so, you could have a cohort that is in school for 10 days, and then the other set of students, they're home and online, working through remotely, so they are directly connected into the classroom. That may happen as well. What that does, and this was an idea shared with the district, which actually was a good idea. It's hard because you have people that are home for 10 days, but you have the weekends before and after, and there's your 14-day quarantine period. So on that option, and the first time I heard that, it was, ugh. So I know a lot of people are, probably, having a hard time with that one. But if you really think about that, it has the medical benefits built in. Again, do we know which way that's going to go? We do not. Please do not take these as set in stone. There may be something that we don't know yet, and that's where we need the flexibility to be able to move that. But we've got to talk about those things and put them out there that it might need to look different. Tier 3 is solely online. So if there is a point where health orders tell us you need to close it up and you need to go online, we'll do it, and we'll be ready to do so. If you take a look on 38, 39, and page 40, 41, keep on going there with me, Zach. 42, it walks through every one of the tiers under those scenarios. So student family support. What would we do if kids are in school? Well, you have nurses that are going to be available. You have counselors that are going to be available. We know our kids haven't been in school by the time we start. It's been 5 months. That is a long time. We need to make sure that our kids are emotionally safe when they come in. And it's not just our students, it is our staff. This has been very difficult on everybody. And so we got to be prepared. But under each one of those tiers, and I know it's, we've been through this for quite a while now, but it's very important that each one of those logistics, we have those outlined about what that might look like for nutrition services, any of those going through. But I think the key thing here is that we will be able to offer choice for our families for in-person and remote or virtual education. It's very important. Any questions up to there?
Any questions?
I guess one question. When you talked a lot about the virtual learning and everything, I know with our curriculums we've adopted over the last few years, there's been a focus on collaborative learning. Do our virtual options still allow for the collaborative learning?
Are you referring to collaboration of kids or teachers?
Kids. So kids being able to get in a group of 3 and work on a project virtually.
Did you want to take that, Nicole? I was going to answer, but go ahead.
Oh. Okay. If the kids can work together virtually, is that what you were asking, like collaboratively on projects and stuff? Yes. So there's some unintended consequences that come with everything, right? And so with all the emergency learning occurring, you have Google and Zoom and all of these different platforms that basically took every issue that was arising and they enhanced their programs. And so we use Google at this time, and Google Hangouts does operate and allow that for teachers and for students. So there are platforms and a plethora of options that are available so that we can try to mimic what best practice is within a brick and mortar setting online.
Thank you.
I think we've addressed the idea of vulnerable students having a choice. What if we have vulnerable staff? Are we looking at potential accommodations for that?
I have a whole thing to address with that. Do you want me to address that specific thing right now? Okay. So the answer is yes. The consideration is being put in place for all 6,000 plus students and staff. And obviously there's laws and policies that we have to follow with ADA. We have our 504s for adults, but we also know that we have vulnerabilities that necessarily aren't qualifying on a 504 that we have to take into consideration. And so what staff need to do, they need to get in contact with either their principal or they need to talk with Samantha Garner, who is our 50 I guess I'm the 504 coordinator, but Samantha's my right hand. So Samantha Garner and myself, so that we can make sure that we are individually accommodating and meeting the needs of our staff. Again, there's a lot of options that we have already tried to play through scenarios to put in place, but the health and safety of our staff is just as much of a priority as our students' health and safety.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Batolo?
Yes, first of all, thank you all very, very much for a magnificent job. A lot of times I ask questions because I want to anticipate what people are going to ask us tomorrow because it didn't get said bluntly enough. Can someone talk to us about what you would suggest that parents consider when they make the plan going into this first school year? What kinds of, I mean, I can look at these, all the different plans and different things, and I know that they're going to be determined by conversations with our health department and all of those things. I guess what I'm trying to say is, what can we offer them today so they can at least start thinking about? You know, they say you're supposed to have fire drills at your house, and everybody agrees that that's a great thing to do, but I don't know anyone that's ever done that. So I guess I'm kind of asking an open-ended question with the idea that now what? Okay, we've got what looks like a great plan, and we just have to wait to see what situation we fall into. What would you suggest to people to get ready for the school year?
So Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, and members of the board. I guess being in HR, a lot of times I get to say the direct, blunt answers that follow the policy and law. So Mr. Batolo is spot on. I've been writing down some of the questions and concerns people have, but I've also tried to summarize some of that because every single decision that we make or that parents make, we need to have the facts because there can be unintended consequences, whether they're good or bad, with any decision that is made. And that's including the direction or choices that parents make, whether it's going to be online schooling, wanting their kid in person. So I had to write it down so that I make sure I answer it all. So we know that many will agree and many will disagree with the plan, no matter what is put in place. But I hope people understand that the decisions being made by the district for reentry are not based, nor can they be based on political beliefs or one's personal opinion. All decisions are determined based off CDC guidance, medical professionals, the state and local medical guidance and rules, and also what we're able to do, the rules that we're able to follow, or the rules that are in place that we have to follow when we open schools in the safest manner possible. All decisions have the health, well-being, and safety of over 6,000 individuals with students and staff combined. But it's even beyond that. It's when we send them home and what they may take home to loved ones. We have a very diverse population with many different needs and levels of care. It is essential that we take every precaution we can while offering quality educational opportunities. This is not a decision being made lightly. We are trying to anticipate every what if so we can anticipate our response. The what ifs, they're endless. So much unknown and so much out of our control, but every decision we make and reaction we have has an effect, and that is constantly in the back of our minds. We want students back. We want and will offer all educational opportunities. Our goal is to have options for our families that meet their needs. We know there are many different situations and worries, so we want options online. We have that. A mixture of online and in-person. We are going to be able to offer that, and in-person to meet the needs of everyone involved, along with being able to adjust to situations that are posed at the snap of a finger. With these options do come stipulations that have to be followed for the safety of everyone and to follow laws and rules set forth by the state. If you want to come in person and we can't social distance, yes, a mask is required, maybe a small price in order to meet some of the mental health needs and educational opportunities for our kids. If you want to stay home, attendance is going to be required. The flexibility will not be there that was there in the spring, nor will our educational opportunities look like they did in the spring. People ask about masks. Yes, they will be required. We understand that there's some underlying medical conditions where an individual may not be able to wear masks. We also have face shields that are going to be an option. We understand that we have kids that have disabilities that are going to need accommodations, and so and thank goodness for our local medical providers have helped us in ordering masks that also have the window, but our staff will also have the option for face shields. That's not going to be negotiable. Someone asked if they can have homemade masks. Yes, but the district has also ordered cloth masks, but we also have disposable masks. We also have face shields. Casey has just done a wonderful job in getting a lot of different options for our special needs kids that have sensory issues. We are trying to think of every avenue. However, I would like to give the caution that if you do choose to bring your own mask, which we were told that, everybody has a different preference for masks, and when you find one that's comfortable, you're less likely to be touching and playing with the mask. But our dress codes will still stand, and if any masks are worn and display, I guess, many different options, and it disrupts the learning, we do have the option to give you a mask to wear and not allow you to wear the mask that you have brought. Please wear neutral masks. I'll just leave it at that. Online will look very different, as they've stated in the spring, and will be structured different as the school year starts. Spring was emergency learning. We cannot emphasize that enough. It was thrown at the education system and educators with very limited time to prepare. Again, thank you to our educators, our IT staff, everybody, our parents, everybody. You stepped up to the challenge and we did the best we can. We now have had time to plan, order further technology that's needed, and find professional development opportunities to our teachers, of which will be rolled out tomorrow. We learned a lot in the spring with further support also that we need to offer for our families. The district has received numerous calls requesting records for their students as they are going to attend a virtual educational opportunity outside our district. Please, please listen to this. I'm not trying to sway your decision. However, if you are enrolling your child in an online school, that school will request the records. And as soon as they request the records, we send all of those records to that school. But we urge parents to please call and ask questions. We will take whatever time is necessary to answer any questions and educate you on any avenue that you are wanting to take. There are many factors to options that need to be known. Some of those factors is if where you're going, if it's accredited. If you're in high school and you are homeschooling and doing a homeschool program or doing an online program that's not accredited, there's a chance the credits could be accepted if you choose to come back to school, but it's unlikely. And I have a policy that we can put up on the website for people to read all of the guidelines that go with that. Not accepting credits can affect graduation.
Nicole?
Yes. Go ahead.
One quick item. I apologize for interrupting you. When you were talking about that, I think it's important for our families to know that when one of our schools, when our secretaries return, which is July 28th, when we receive a records request from another school, it is the procedure of the district to drop that student. So our families, from our records, so our families need to be very sure on the steps that they're taking. Because when we do that, a lot of times our families, especially at the elementary, put in out of area requests, childcare requests. And so when any of that happens, they lose their spot for those kind of things. Thanks.
Thank you, and that is very true. There is a lot of misinformation out on social media that if you enroll on online virtual platforms or in other districts, that you can automatically participate in many of the things that the district offers, and that's false. We have to have MOUs with some of these other districts or virtual online platforms in order for us to accommodate some of the learning. And so far, because ADM is not, they don't want to share the ADM, we do not get permission to do that. So please be careful, because just because you're unenrolled in our district does not mean that you automatically get the right to participate in everything that the district offers. So again, I just emphasize, please, please talk to us. I'm not knocking homebound or homeschooling. I'm not knocking online programs. If that is what you choose to do, and that's the best decision for you and your family, we will support it. All I'm saying is that we are here and we are available to answer any questions so that you make sure you have all the facts that you can make the best educated decision for you and your child. The district has a plan that is flexible to meet families' needs dependent on where the situation is with COVID and what the state and health guidance is at that time. We know the role the district plays with our families for childcare, food, educational opportunities, and a safe environment. And before the comments fly, I don't want judgment with childcare. We have many families that struggle, and once their kids are in school, they don't have that set up, and they have to work, and they are genuinely concerned at what is going to happen to my child on these random days that I can't plan out. There is no judgment when people say that, not from our end. We understand the vital role that we play in people's lives, and it weighs heavy on every decision we make. This is something, again, that's at the forefront of every single decision. We will be making plans for help online and having various options for assistance for students that are having to attend with the synchronous learning or having to watch things afterwards. We also will look at different options for after hours help. There are many questions on attendance. Our attendance policy is still in place, but if you're sick, stay home. That's always been the rule. If you're running a fever, throwing up, or have diarrhea, those are kind of the three main things. Stay home. If you suspect that your child is sick with COVID symptoms, stay home. The key has been and is essential in moving forward, the communication from home to school. Communication with our principals and our nurses is going to be number one. Through communication, we have ways to document confidentially situations so that attendance does not count against the student. With some of the options, they may be able to attend remotely, which won't count, or I'm sorry, it will count as if they're there in person. We have codes that we can enter again so that it doesn't hurt the child. Most importantly, we're fortunate enough to have nurses. We have nurses who are very qualified. They have degrees, they have experience, they have compassion, they have understanding, and the district 110% trusts and relies on their judgment. The question came up if the district has plans or how we're going to pay for testing. We do not have something in place for testing staff and students every single day. But the one thing that we have looked into is that the district is not required and will not pay for COVID-related medical visits for students. Staff that are under our insurance plan, that falls under the insurance plan of what coverage will be. But there may be times that, depending on the guidance and what we get from the nurses and the medical experts, that you may have to be tested before you can return to school. But please know that the district is committed and we will follow all HIPAA and FERPA laws and respect everybody's confidentiality and privacy. I already kind of talked about the staff, but please know there are leave policies in place. There are temporary and emergency COVID laws with FMLA and procedures that are in place that will be communicated and detailed out for your information. Again, it is a priority to support our staff and students and protect everyone in this district. Our expectations for teachers will be clearly outlined as far as lesson planning, the delivery of instruction, the different options that are available. Again, we have online training that people are asking for that will start to be rolled out tomorrow so that, well, look, we have so many staff members that are already doing this on their own. So we'll provide the opportunity so they can feel prepared coming into school. The issue of allergies for lunch in the classroom, we will treat this no matter what environment they're in. We will treat this the same we do in the lunchroom. We will provide accommodations. We will provide a space where it is a peanut-free table if we need to, the hand washing, the sanitizing. We will take all measures that we currently take no matter what environment they're in. I really hope I answered most of the questions and got them written down that people asked. If I didn't, put it online and we will do what we can to answer it.
I've got a couple.
Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Superintendent
Are you okay?
McGovern.
There's been a couple of questions about lockers. Are we going to have lockers? That we don't know yet. It depends on, what we're up against when what the orders are. So we can't answer that one for lockers. Another question, we talked about the screenings that parents would do at home every day. They keep an eye on their kids. One of the things that we would ask, we talked about the fever and the symptoms. If you have a student, and Nicole mentioned this a lot, but one of our concerns that we want to make sure to put it all out there for everybody, if you have a student that is riding district transportation or you're bringing them, if they're sick, please keep them home. But one concern that we have is if a sick child goes to the bus stop And if they have a fever and they try to get on the bus, it's going to really, really put the driver of the bus and all of the other students in harm's way. So the only way that we can make this work is by everybody working together. If the driver has a student that has a fever, we will be calling the parents. It's just like the fever when they come through the kiosk. We'll be, they have radios in the buses. We'll be getting a hold of the parents, and we need your help. The child cannot go on the bus. We don't want to leave the bus stop and have a sick child there at the bus stop. So we need your help. Please prevent that from happening. We know nobody would mean to do that, but if you do get a call for that, we cannot allow, and our weather here gets cold, and we don't want to leave kids out there, so we've got to make sure that they're taken care of. But we're very concerned about sick kids coming to the bus stop and making sure that they're taken care of, because we can't leave them there and we cannot bring them to school. So please help us so we do our very best. John had asked too about, what can we do between now and then, between the end of this month when we know more is coming out? And we're going to try to get more information for our staff. At the end of school, they were so tired. Parents were so tired. I mean, everybody had so much screen time. People were they just needed to rest. Our staff, they're ready to go, and we'll get that information out. But what can they do between now and then? More details will come about masks. If we have people asking about homemade masks, we'll get more out. The district is well prepared for those. But I think the best thing, when John was asking about what can people do, I think they can talk with their child. They're listening to everything that you say, even when you don't think that they're listening. Whichever avenue is good for your family, they will truly take heart and do what you do as parents and your stance. The school's not a political place. It is not. And it's around us, it's social media, and we're faced with it all the time. But we have to go off of what those health orders are, and that schools are a good place for kids. And that's what we want to provide. And so we know it's tempting, but we can rise above all of that. We know we've got a lot going in the community, a lot on a national level, but we will do what is best for our kids and not about a political arena. With that,
I have one more question that I think
Please.
is, thank you, Ms.
Sorry,
McGovern.
Nicole.
No, you're fine. These questions have come while you were speaking, and I just want to make sure we answer them for people because very real concerns. There is the question if people choose to have their whatever option, I guess, people choose, the district will have something in place based off of the plans that are approved and where we're at with health orders for us to be able, or for you to be able to indicate what choice you want so that we can honor that. We'll have a way, whether it's through updating the registration, we will get all that information out to you. And no, there will not be a medical waiver required unless they're telling us that I guess it could be. I'm not going to say 100% there wouldn't be, but how the guidance has come right now, there's not a medical waiver that would be required for someone to choose to educate their student online. We have health providers that don't want to send their kids just because of what they potentially bring home, and they don't want to take the chance of the kids spreading it at school. And I think that it's our right to honor, it's our obligation to honor that. So no to the medical waiver right now. What kind of requirements proven?
That kind of goes back to my comment about vulnerable staff as well as vulnerable students, because we don't know who's home. There could be grandparents at home. There's any number of reasons that there might be vulnerable people in their lives. And I don't think we have the right to question that. That should be their choice.
I agree, and we've had in-depth conversations about that because maybe someone doesn't have high risk or doesn't have anybody vulnerable, but they're just scared. And I think that we're mental health, we worry about the mental health, we worry about the food, we worry about the medical, we worry about providing shelter. This is so much bigger than just providing educational opportunities. And so, Mr. Chair Jellicoe, sorry, this is a high priority that has been discussed at length with the options that we're going to look at so that we can provide families that opportunity and hopefully put them at ease. But again, can I just stress, before you choose to take your student out of our school system, please talk to us. Our online options will look different this fall than they did in the spring. We are in a different situation and we are able to provide excellent educational opportunities. We don't want to lose the kids. And so please know that your only option for online does not mean that you need to unenroll your student in our district and go somewhere else. Please, please talk to us.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman.
so as we see these dozens of questions come in, and we've been at it for 2 hours now, what are the odds of putting like an FAQ on the website to answer? I mean, I'm confident that we have 5,000 kids, that we don't have 10,000 parents watching this video right now to get the answers.
Superintendent McGovern.
Sure. Our goal first in our communication plan is always to go to the board first. So if the board approves this plan, we would like to get a video out tomorrow with some of the key things and then start the communication there. The plan is very extensive. There's some other pieces that we will be adding to it as we know more, but that's our next step. So I know Jody's working on professional development for tomorrow. Stephanie, Nicole, and I will work on the video to start getting that communication out. And then when we know more, we'll start getting that. So I think a lot of their questions will come as we can move that further details in play. But that was our plan, actually, was to do that tomorrow.
So if a family decides that they want to take the virtual learning route, do we know yet whether we're going to need a date for them to be able to sign up for that? Is that coming down the road too? As we know more information, it's not immediate that we need that information is what I'm asking.
Right. So when John was asking, what can parents do? They can really start to think. Now they know what the district, they are going to have some choices. And so they can take a little bit of time while we develop what that procedure, so we can share that with our families, but they can start to think about, okay, we know that this is going to be available. What's best for us?
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right. And hopefully we answered all the questions, as many of the questions in the public comments. So I'm glad we did reverse that. I think that was very helpful.
And Stephanie's been feeding us live feed questions, so we're trying to answer those at the same time. Just for time's sake, Casey, there were some questions about special services, and I think very quickly, I think you need an opportunity to do that, and we should probably go into mental health. Casey, please.
Yeah, thank you. Over the last, I think, week, we've had several parents contact us because of the health risks. We have some really severe 504 students, allergies. We have some severe health risk students within our district. So there have been some concerns of what this is going to look like in the fall for them, just because of safety. Not only they might have it, but they also have siblings that have some health risks. So what is that going to look like? So we've had these conversations. I think it's important that we go with the guidelines and recommendations that were given. Our goal is always to have all students in school. We know that they learn best when they're in school. So that is our main goal based off what guidance we give. We do know that we do have some students, because of social anxiety, because of other things, they do better online. So those were some of the options that we are going to offer, because we've had several parents tell us, their kids did very well online. They didn't have the stress, anxiety that they have with their peers in class. So that has come our way, and we want to make sure that they're comfortable with that, and that's an option for those kids. Again, though, with some of those kids, that should go back to those IEP teams, because they know best. They know what those kids need. They know how to get some of those accommodations in place, especially if they're doing online. So if they're in a classroom, they need to make sure people are aware of those accommodations and how they can make sure that they're implemented in that gen ed setting. So those are some options. I know Kelly talked about, and Stephanie, those swivel cameras. That's another great option, because we have a lot of kids in co-taught classes. This is a great opportunity for those two teachers to collaborate, work together in that class, and those students still get those services even though they're online. So this is great for those kids as well. But we also know that those kids, some of those kids, especially our programs kids, they need to be in class. They do. They learn best. They need one-on-one prompting. They need the visual cues. They need a lot of that modeling. So those are some of those options that we want to provide. We need to get some of those kids in there, because otherwise those services aren't going to be provided. We have kids that have PT and OT, adaptive PE. Those services, it's hard to deliver virtually, especially when you have no training. So our goal is they need to be in school for those services. So maybe that hybrid offer, we know that a lot of our IEPs are written to weekly goals or monthly goals. Those services are in there. So weekly, the time may be 90 minutes. Monthly, it may be 180. With a hybrid model, even if some days they are not in school, we still have that luxury, because when they're there, they still get those services. We don't have to worry about that, where that online was hard. And like it was crisis learning, we were adapting as we were going, and it was very hard for some of those service providers to get it. We also know that mental health is huge. How are we going to get those services in? I think virtually we get more opportunities, because we can provide some of those services virtually, which this is nice with that swivel camera and some of our teletherapists. So I think we have a lot of flexibility with some of those services that we've never had. So we're able to implement some of those things that we never had available to us. So this actually gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot more adaptability to some of those kids, which is good. But I do stress, these are part of the IEP teams. They do know those kids the best, and so they need to have those conversations with those teams. The medically fragile, we need to have those medical providers involved, and the nurses as well, because they need to give us the recommendations for those kids to best service them in the school or online as well. So those are some of the questions. I know sensory came up. I think Nicole and Kelly did a good job with, the masks. Honestly, I can tell you masks are going to be very difficult for a lot of our severe students and some of our sensory deprived. So how are we going to accommodate that? We got the face shields. I know we have some hats that have the face shields, because we know some of those kids can wear hats. So that's an option too. Hats are easier for some of those kids to put on and off, and we can clean those. So we have purchased those as well. Like Nicole was talking about, we have some of our deaf and hard of hearing students, and we have some of our low COG and our nonverbal students. They read lips. That is one of the ways that they communicate and can understand us. So we bought some masks that have the clear piece, so they can read the lips as well. So we have a lot of flexibility. We have a lot of supports that we have ordered just to make sure that those kids are safe within the building. It was very difficult, though, I can tell you, because being an educational, we're not in the medical field. It's hard to purchase some of these items if you're not in the medical field. So I know Dan had some issues, I had issues, but luckily as a community, they stepped up to help us. They reached out, ordered them, gave them to us. So luckily we have good community health providers that can support us. So thankfully, they are helping us to make sure that kids are safe, staff is safe, and that's where we need to go. So like we're talking, our ending goal is all kids in class, and that's where we want to go. But we do know that we have to offer some of those options. And I think as a district, having the swivel cameras, having the online, the virtual now, we can do more for some of our students and help them more than we have in the past. So I'm thankful for where we've gone, and, Scott, Gina finding money, Dan helping us with safety, because I do think that we're in the right direction as a district and we're moving forward. So even if we have snow days, whatever, we're able to deal with what we're doing. So hopefully IEPs, we're good to go. I know we're still going to have those questions, because of recess, the social pieces, a lot of our kids need that. But like Dan said, if we can get those schedules, we can get some of those pieces in place for the cleaning, things like that. So we're hoping we can still have those social pieces for those kids that they need for their peer interaction. So any other questions? Hopefully I think I did answer everything that came our way, but any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so that concludes the plan. Okay.
The only other piece that I think our community would like to know is we're really keeping an eye on mental health. And knowing the doors haven't been open for quite a while. In the last couple of pages of the plan, it's got some resources, but we're going to be adding more local resources for mental health providers. Should a family need to be able to take a look at that or have wraparound services in school and then outside in the community. And then also for our staff on their opening faculty meetings when they come back, we will be talking with them on just signs for when kids come through the door for those that need extra support.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I would just like to thank the task force, the administration, everyone that's been involved with this plan. I think even though it doesn't answer detailed questions in some cases, I think we have the idea and we know that the health orders coming forward are going to dictate a lot of what we're able to do. So hopefully we're in a good place when when the beginning of August comes and we can make those decisions and carry through and we don't end up in a much worse situation than we find ourselves now. So thank you very much to all those that have been involved. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll proceed with the agenda. Item number 9 is the treasurer's report. Mr. Jackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the general fund, we started with $22,714,614.10, and we finished with $11,443,303.44. On the school lunch program, we started with $264,796.31, and we finished with $344,686.36. And for Head Start, we started with $60,863.11, and we finished with $58,265.81.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Hay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Motion passes. Okay, item number 10, the warrants. Mr. Jackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. District warrants from June 22nd to July 14th were check number 137821 through 137910 and 137911 through 138069.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
There's a delay there. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion, unless members of the board request specific items to be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Minutes. 11A, approval of the minutes from the June 8th, 2020 regular meeting. 11B, approval of the minutes from the June 8th, 2020 executive session. 11C, approval of the minutes from the June 22nd, 2020 special board meeting and public hearing. 11D, approval of the minutes from the June 22nd, 2020 executive session. Finance. 11E, approval of the 2020-2021 budget. Personnel. 11F, approval of personnel recommendations. Facilities. 11G, post-approval and authorization of the payment to Clark's Quality Roofing and Construction for the emergency roof repair at North Park Elementary School. 11H, approval of payment application number 3 for JFC Engineers and Surveyors for the testing and inspection service for the Rock Springs Satellite High School. 11I, approval of payment application number 3 for GH Phipps Wyoming, Inc. for the general contracting of Rock Springs Satellite High School. 11J, approval of retainage payment number 3 for GH Phipps Wyoming, Inc. for Rock Springs Satellite High School. 11K, approval and authorization of the payment to the City of Rock Springs for the water and sewer tap fees for the Rock Springs Satellite High School. 11L, approval of the bid for the purchase and installation of a scoreboard at the Rock Springs High School Tiger Stadium. Technology. 11M, post-approval of the purchase of swivel cameras, cloud subscription licenses, and tripods for use in district classrooms. Nutrition services. 11N, approval of the bid for milk and dairy products for the 2020-2021 school year. 11O, approval to purchase food product and supplies for the 2020-2021 school year. Curriculum. 11P, approval to initiate the renewal and purchase of additional licenses of Imagine Learning software. 11Q, approval of the bids for surplus books. General Board Business. 11R, approval of the Wyoming High School Activities Association District Representatives. Transportation. Approval to declare 6 vehicles as surplus property and to be disposed of by trade-in toward the purchase of 6 new like vehicles. Okay, hearing none held, then is there a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Let's go to the addendum. Okay, the addendum, item number 1, personnel, except the hires and, see, it looks like they're all hires there. Technology, approval for the Information Technology Department to purchase 75 kGT wireless hotspots from Troxel. And 2B, approval for the Information Technology Department to renew Keep It Safe off-site backups. There's a correction on couple of the warrants. So we're requesting approval to release the following payments. And technology, recommendation for approval of the Sweetwater 1-1 handbook changes for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there a motion for those items on the addendum?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, item number 12 is the health premiums. Mr. Duncan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, Superintendent McGovern. The item before you is to recommend acceptance of the premiums for the 2020-2021 plan year, pending selection of a stop-loss reinsurance carrier. So these are provisional rates that we hope to finalize in August. And they're provisional because we're still shopping ourselves out for a stop-loss rate. And the idea behind provisional rates in July and finalizing the rates in August is it gives the employees and the retirees a chance to see what the premiums might be before open enrollment, which starts August 1st and runs through the end of the month.
So would these be the highest the rates would be?
Not necessarily. They're driven by two components. One, the administrative costs and also the stop-loss insurance costs. Well, I guess three, the claims. And so they all kind of interplay, so they could go one way or the other depending upon the ratio of the particular quote.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Is there a motion?
So
Motion.
moved.
Okay, motion to approve the insurance premiums as proposed. It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. Any further discussion?
Second.
I've got one question. Did you have a little bit more there, Mr. Duncan, or?
I would if it's the pleasure of the board.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
Zach, could you go to like the second page? I'd just like to explain a little bit about the rationale of
Okay.
the increase and why we're recommending that those be capped at the 15% for the employees and the
Please proceed.
retirees. Yep. So the current year increase, we're expected to see a little over 30%. We're proposing to cap the rates for the retirees, employees at 15% and the over 65 retirees at 10%. We do have a little bit of the reserves and health insurance fund to help us do that. The thought behind that is in a bad year, we can cap the increase in rates, but we also hope to make that up in years in which we have good rates because we just can't, sustain an ongoing subsidy. So if you look at the top part, the top half is the calculations for UMR as to what our rates should be. To catch up to where we need to be, we're looking at almost a 50% increase, and that is pretty large, especially for people on a fixed income. If you go down to the COBRA rates, those are representative of a current year increase for the whole plan, if you will. If you go down to the bottom part, that's the proposed rates for the district. And so that's where you're seeing the cap of the 15% increase. For the COBRAs, since they're not employees, we would want to pass that entire increase on and then cap it at 15% for the retirees and also 10% for the over 65. And this would be the case for the 4 medical plans that we have, the $1,000 PPO, the $1,500 high deductible, $2,500 high deductible, and also the Medicare supplement plan. For the dental and the vision, we're proposing to go with the rates as calculated by UMR, and there are some just very minor increases from last year.
Any other questions?
Scott, you talked about the stop loss carrier and the lasers. What do we pay for the stop loss carrier insurance in a year?
The projected rate is about 1.2.
Okay.
And it's up from a little over 800,000 in the previous year. And so that's where we're getting that
About a
30% increase.
50% increase in it.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we do have a motion before us to approve the insurance premiums for this year. Uh, Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. General Board Business. 13A, temporary approval of revisions to policy IGBA, programs for students with identified disabilities under IDEA. 13B, temporary approval of policy JFC, Code of Student Conduct. Could we have a little bit of an explanation about
Nicole.
the need for these temporary approvals?
Sorry, I'm just making sure I pull up the information so that I give you the right information. So the revisions to the policy. Sorry. The revisions to the policy IGBA, the programs for students with identified disabilities under IDEA. There were some changes to the child find process. And during that, when we were looking at our policy, the district did not have some of the necessary components that are required for the compliance of the disability education law. Even though we're following it, we needed to put more in writing. Instead of just saying we follow the federal law, we actually outlined it out. It's more urgent than some of the other policies because in order for some of our federal grants to come through with special education, these policies have to be adopted and in place in order and submitted to them in order for us to be approved for those grants.
Okay.
So that's the IGBA.
Okay.
The revised student conduct, the JFC, that is something that we were reviewing just to update anyways. But one of the things that changed is the suspension and expulsion laws. There's new requirements that we had to update in the policy, and those are in effect immediately. And so the policy in and of itself didn't change extreme. It is updated, but those components are added. And I will be taking all of these policies immediately to policy committee. I was joking that we're going to need to have a policy committee every day for the first 2 months of school just to get, we have so many laws that are changing and policy updates that are coming. But these were ones that had to be put in place, especially because of the suspension and expulsion piece.
That was legislative changes, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Jackman?
So Nicole, I guess the policy JFC, when I first looked at it, gave me a little bit of, heartburn, I guess, because I see a 6-page policy go to a 14-page policy without, the going through committee and everything. So you're saying there was 8 pages worth of suspension and expulsion rules? I'm kind of confused as to.
No, we were reviewing that policy anyways in updating it to more of our current practices that are already in place within the building that JFC wasn't reflecting. And within that, the legislative update with the suspension and expulsion came in place that actually made this policy kind of come to the forefront of some things that needed to be put in place. The outline of that policy actually outlines more of our PBIS stuff, the positive behavioral intervention supports that we have in place to be more clear for anybody that's reading the policy. There's just been a lot of updates to our practices that we practice within the district. And it outlines some more clearly some of the steps that we take for discipline purposes that have already been in practice.
Okay. And that's kind of my other comment is I would hate for policy committee to come back with a slew of changes. We set the expectations August 17th and then October 1st, we change them.
Yeah, I don't foresee other than
technical kinds of
technical, yeah,
language
kind of
changes?
things, maybe adding a few things in the practice that we're already doing. I don't foresee major changes because it's actually very reflective of the current practices that are going on within the schools.
Thank you, Nicole.
Those are good questions. Thank you. Did I
Madam
answer?
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Batolo.
Mr. Batolo?
Mrs. Bolton, as presented, this is kind of part one of the policy, and then it's going to go through a process and come back to us kind of for a final draft. Is that fair enough to say?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what's going to happen. They'll be going to their priority going forth to the policy committee.
If I may be so bold, policy JFC has a statement in there that says that that it is okay for police to be, or to question, I can't remember the exact words, I apologize. But I guess, this was 10 years ago, the last time this was modified. Can we have our policy group take a look at that notion of a student being interviewed by a police officer without parents knowing about that? I just think we're in a different kind of a world right now. I don't want to overreact to that, but can we take a look at that, please?
Mr. Batolo, all aspects of that policy will be looked at in depth, and I promise that the current wording that is similar to the policy that was there previously is actually, it follows the law guidelines, and we have to be careful everything that we dictate within a policy, because there's certain situations where the police may have to speak with a student that we can't notify the parents for safety reasons. There's a plethora of reasons, and I know that you have some background in that, and I know why you're asking so that we can clarify that. But we're going to look at all aspects to make the answer simple. But it is
Okay.
updated. The wording is updated with what the current law, with what the current laws are that are in place.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of those two? Then I would entertain a motion for the temporary approval of revisions to policy IGBA and policy JFC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 14, general board business. Approval of the Reentry Smart Start Plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hay,
Second.
second by Mrs. Thompson. Any further discussion?
I guess the only thing I have, Madam Chair, is when we go off our leadership governance policies and I look at what we've developed over the last year as a group, it's conflicting because I'm going to support this. I think it's a good plan, but it's tough using our leadership governance policies to make the decision because it says not only students, but all shareholders and to prioritize where we are as a board. We all have the ones at home. We've talked a lot about the loved ones at home. But again, we have to focus on students, and that's what our leadership governance is focused on. That's what our role as school board members is.
Okay.
So,
Further comments?
I just appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into creating this plan. As serving on the task force, I got to see firsthand the commitment that was made by the community members, parents, teachers, and staff all coming together to come up with a plan that we felt would keep our kids and staff safe. I know it might not be ideal and it's going to be changed because the situation is changing daily, but it's a starting point. And I think it's the best we can do with the information we have at this time. And I'm really glad that we do have a mental health piece in there. I know I've been getting a lot of comments about how difficult this spring was on families, the students, the parents, and I think we're going to be dealing with a lot of those issues for a long time, just from the stress aspect of what families went through. And so seeing everything come together to have a plan, it's a good thing for the district. And I'm obviously in support of it. But I appreciate all the time and effort and all of the thought, the questions, the concerns. I don't think we would have had such a great plan had we not come up with a community task force that brought up all of those different issues that not everyone would think about. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Further comments? I will add that I really appreciate the online piece. I think for whatever reason, there are some families out there that, and it's not up to us to ask what those reasons are. I appreciate the fact that it's their decision and that's an option that's available to them. And we hope that they consider taking advantage of it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Transportation. 15A, approval of the school bus routes for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay.
Second.
Discussion.
I did have one question. Madam Chair, I just
Mrs.
wanted
Thompson?
to know if all of the exemptions that we have put in place over the years on the bus routes, are they still in place in this?
Yes, they are.
I believe that question we answered earlier, that if there was an exception, we have extended, so they should be exactly the same as they were last year
Okay,
after we made the exception, so,
thank you.
okay, so good, but good clarification. Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the school bus routes for this year, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 16, the 2020-2021 handbooks. 16A, approval of the handbook changes for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. A second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. Any discussion? Anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, at this point, I would like to add the board self-evaluation regarding budget and finance. This is the first time we've been doing this, so we're kind of in new territory here. So my vision was to basically take a look at it. We could have a discussion about it as we about the items on it and kind of come up with where we are in terms of the practice of that in concluding with our governance action. And then decide if we want to change the process or how we want to move forward going after that. So,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman.
I would make the motion to table this till next month. Not because I don't want to. I just know we have an executive session still scheduled. I can see the faces of my fellow board members getting a little tired.
This is one of our longer ones, isn't it?
So.
And please understand, it absolutely was necessary. We understand that. So, so we have a motion to table it until the next meeting. So do we want to postpone, table this one until next month and cover the one on planning next month? Is that your motion?
Yep.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of tabling this item until next month? And we will do both the budget and finance one and the planning one next month. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, then we will table that one. Yeah, let me see where my agenda is. Okay, item number 17 is new business. 17A is the vacancy notice as of July 8th, 2020. I would note that there have been some consolidations of them. Some positions have been eliminated, and we still have some positions to fill. So,
I'm sorry, Chair Jellicoe.
Mrs. Bolton?
With the addendum items, we're down to, and the absorbed positions, I should very clearly say that, we're down to 8 open positions.
That does leave us, even though we have absorbed some positions, that does leave us in a much better position than we were last year at this time.
Yes, yes.
Okay. 17B is the calendar for the months of July, August, September, and October 2020. 17C is the June 2020 Head Start Liaison Report. And the next item will be an executive session. It will be for the purpose of legal and personnel. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay to go into executive session for the purpose of legal and personnel matters. We do not anticipate any action being taken upon our return. Okay. Okay.